Hello, welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee of Portsmouth City Council, held in the Guildhall here in Portsmouth. I'm Gerald Van Jackson, I'm chair of the committee. And just to let people know the housekeeping things, there's no fire alarm plan, so if there's one that goes off, it's real. And please leave the building and meet by Queen Victoria. If you've signed in at the Guildhall, please sign out so that people don't come hunting for you. This meeting is live streamed and includes people making deputations, so you will be seen. If you want to speak, please push the button for the microphone and that alerts you. When voting, colleagues, if you could make sure that it is very clear with putting your hand up in a decent manner, then we can make sure that we get everything right. And just to let people know who may not have been to the planning committee before, we look at each planning application and we go through in a series of steps. The first is the officers present a presentation about the application. Then people who come to speak to us, either members of the public or councillors, have their time, and that's 6 minutes each. We then there are questions from members of the planning committee to see if they need to tease anything out, and we finish up with then comments or proposals coming forward about what we're going to do, and then come to a decision. Okay, now we have some slight changes in the committee, which has proved slightly difficult. So now that Judith Smythe has gone back into the Labour group, she therefore isn't able to sit in the place that was given up by Pip for Judith to be able to sit on. Therefore, she's no longer a member of this committee, and we are without a vice chair. As this is the last meeting of this group, I don't think we need to have a vice chair. We just got to get through just one meeting, and I intend to be here all the time. If I die during the meeting, we may have to think again. Chris, no, Chris can't do it because we're going to go through in the order of business on the paper, and Chris wouldn't know how to do that. So the other thing, we have apologies from Councillor Candlish and Councillor Mason. Councillor Mark Jeffrey is subbing for Councillor Hugh Mason, I think. But we are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, we're only 2 down. Okay, so we're 8. But and thank you both Ray and Mark for stepping in. Otherwise, we'd be quite close to being in quorum. Okay, let's quickly go around and introduce everybody. So let's do the members of the committee first. Councillor Shah.
Asghar Shah, Councillor for Colsham and Wimbring.
Good morning, Chair. Chris Atwell, St Thomas Ward.
Mary Vallely for Cosham and Wimmering.
Councillor Derek North for Cosham and Wimmering.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Matthew Cordy, member for Hilsey.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Raymond Dent, Cotton Ward.
Morning, Mark Jeffrey, St Thomas Ward.
Thanks very much indeed. Then our colleagues from the Planning Department.
Good morning, my name's Simon Turner, I'm a team leader.
Ed Lee, Senior Planning Officer.
Morning, Chair. David Hodges, Head of Development Management.
Thank you. And for our colleagues from Democratic Services.
Hello, Lisa Gallagher from Democratic Services.
Lovely. And then people who come to speak to us.
Councillor Russell Simpson, Hilsey Ward, speaking for 16 Shadwell Road.
Thanks, Russell. Ben?
Councillor Benedict Swan, Copner and Anchorage Park Ward, speaking on 217 Copner Road.
Hello.
Alex King, I'm the planning agent for the Royal Beach Hotel application.
Lovely.
Carrie-Anne Wells, agent for Apicore, dealing with 36 Chichester Road, 16 Shadwell Road and 133 Laburnum Grove. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Beg your pardon, I missed that one, Karen.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. James Cohen, I'm the planning agent for 217 Cotmore Road.
Lovely.
Good morning, David Blackford. I'm here talking on the Royal Beach Hotel development.
Thank you very much indeed. And hello again.
Hello there, good morning. So it's Steve and Joan Bundy, 38 Chichester Road. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Anybody else? No,
Yeah. Myself, Councillor Lee
Oh,
Hunt.
sorry,
Nelson
Lee, I
Wood.
didn't spot you. My apologies.
It's all right, I'm hiding behind the powerful aura of Councillor Dent in front of me.
Now, that sounds worrying. I'm sure he's had a bath this week.
Yeah. No. Anyway, yes, so I'm Councillor Lee Hunt. I'm here as a Nelson Ward councillor. That's Stamshaw, Tipner, North End and Buckland. And I'm here on the item at 36 Chichester Road. And Chair, Mrs Bundy is here. I did appeal last time that she could go, that you alter the business, so they go, it's chilly in here, you know, believe it or not to you and me, but Mrs Bundy's wrapped up in blankets, and I'd be grateful if she could be released as quickly as possible, rather than hang about like last time.
Okay, we'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
Juliet.
Good morning, I'm Juliet Gill, I'm the Principal Planning Solicitor at Portsmouth City Council.
And we are honoured today to be joined by the news. Toby, hello. Who are you, Toby? Okay, so I understand that Mr. Legg, who is not well, is that correct? So he's not here. And we've got Darren Brewer and George Madgwick here for Collington Crescent, and neither of them are here. Russell, do you know the...
Yeah, he's going to be here in a bit. He's running a little bit late.
So if we did that one first, we'd escape.
You'd probably upset him.
Should we do that one first then?
No.
Okay. Okay, colleagues. Councillor Hunt, we are... Chichester Road is second on the list. Would it be okay if we do stick to the order and come to your colleagues second? Would that be all right, Mr.
Yes, they say yes. They're probably enjoying the DMOP happy atmosphere here.
Absolutely.
You know?
Okay. All right. Let's run through then. Let's stick to the order we have if we can. So 207-217 Copner Road.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry, minutes.
Yeah, declarations
Of
and
interest.
minutes
Yes,
as
okay.
well.
So apologies we've done. Declarations of interest. Anybody got any declarable interests? No. Minutes previous meeting held on the 19th and the 2nd of 19th of March and the 2nd of April. Colleagues, are you happy with those? Lovely. Okay. Copner Road. Thank you for keeping us on the straight and narrow.
Morning, yeah, so 207 to 217 Copner Road, just a bit of smat to run through before the presentation. The officer report explains that the scheme cannot provide for affordable housing and provide a normal profit level for the applicant. However, at the officer's invitation, the applicant has voluntarily afforded £20,000 for affordable housing as a commuted sum, so that's completely voluntary on the applicant. And we'll run through the viability stuff in terms of affordable housing during the presentation, but that is a voluntary contribution and the recommendation remains unchanged. So in terms of the application, it is for the demolition of the existing builders merchant and construction of a Part 3, 4 and 5-storey building to provide 25 flats. The site is currently an industrial yard on the junction of Copner Road, Stubbington Avenue and Burfields Road. It has a number of associated single-storey buildings on there that have popped up various points throughout its lifetime. I think it's fair to say that it's a pretty unsightly site. It has a lot of billboards. It's very industrial and functional in its nature. In terms of its land use, it has an unrestricted use for industrial purposes, having operated for a number of years, certainly over the 10 years that it required. So it can operate unrestricted without any conditions under its current land use. In terms of local and national policy, the site is previously developed, so it needs to be considered as brownfield land. In the National Planning Policy Framework, that means unless we can demonstrate that significant harm is identified, we effectively shouldn't be refusing it, and we should be affording significant weight to its redevelopment in the plan and balance. As part of the emerging local plan previously endorsed by full council, the Housing and Economic Land Availability Assessment, the HELAR, identified this site as having potential for redevelopment of up to 25 flats, so effectively what's been applied for. And as always with a residential development, members should note the lack of a current 5-year housing land supply, which is currently at 4.97, so only slightly under, of course, but that still triggers the tilted balance in favour of the residential development. So in terms of the proposal, the applicant is seeking planning permission for the construction of 25 self-contained residential units, and that would be made up of 11 one-beds, 11 two-beds, and 3 three-bed units, all of which would be meeting the nationally described space standards, all of which would have adequate natural light and outlook, and all of which would have access to at least the communal outdoor spaces. So there are roof terraces, and there's a small space of amenity area at ground floor level in the rear yard. And also some of the flats have their own private amenity spaces. So in terms of access to the site, it's currently accessed from a drop curb on Copner Road, which isn't an ideal layout considering there are sort of HGVs and big deliveries coming and going, which obviously as unrestricted, we have no control over how intense that use could get. And certainly driving along there are sometimes 2 trucks turning up at the same time, which can cause some traffic issues. That would be moved to Stubbington Avenue. So you see there on the top right, that would be under an undercroft, which would lead into the rear yard, which provides 9 parking spaces, 2 of which would be disabled. All of which would have electrical charging capabilities as well. So highways have reviewed the scheme and are satisfied that there are no highway safety concerns raised. In fact, they think it would be an improvement to the existing, being that it's moved away from the busy junction and it's on a slightly less busy road. So in terms of the building itself, we could skip that on. You'll see there are a number of flats on each floor, so the building would incrementally step away from the corner, step in and step inside. So the top floor, the 5-storey element, would only have the 1 flat there you can see on top, sort of a penthouse. But yeah, so there's a mix of 1, 2 and 3 bed units that are sort of pepper potted in different floors. You can see from the elevations that it steps down quite significantly from its highest point to lower to a similar sort of height to the residential dwellings that adjoin it. So it's obviously going to be taller than the other buildings in the immediate vicinity, with its highest part being 5 stories. But we're of the opinion that architectural techniques such as stepping down, modulation, the use of corner windows, contrasting materials, that sort of thing, helps to break up its sense of bulk and mass. And we think it's pretty successful in its execution. So the application also includes various other works, including the formation of a new lay-by on Copner Road. Just trying to find that. Yeah, you can see just at the bottom there. So that would be done under a 278 agreement with our highways team, and that's effectively to provide a safe drop-off area for deliveries such as Amazon, groceries, visitor drop-offs and stuff like that. Mainly because there was a concern around, that sort of thing might be stopping on the double yellow lines, which could cause highway safety concerns. So no biodiversity on site currently, so the statutory 10% doesn't apply in this instance. However, you'll note that there's quite a lot of soft landscaping and planting going on, so there will be a significant uplift in biodiversity anyway. And in terms of affordable housing, so unfortunately no affordable housing is provided on site or as a commuted sum, other than the 20 grand that we previously mentioned. And that is because the applicant has robustly demonstrated the provision of affordable housing is not possible on the site. And basically what that means is the developer can't take a reasonable expected level of profit whilst providing affordable housing. National and local policy is very clear that if that is done at the expense of the applicant and confirmed by a third party, which we have had done as well, we couldn't refuse planning permission on that, so it's policy compliant effectively. But as per the SMAT, they have voluntarily offered £20,000, which obviously probably won't be enough to provide any new affordable housing, but can be used to renovate existing units. So it could be a couple of flats that are renovated. So on to the main issues that have obviously been identified through deputations and councillors' objections. Parking is probably the most prevalent. There is an under-provision of car parking when assessed against the SPD, but as always, we note that the SPD is guidance rather than explicit policy, and it's an expected level rather than a required level. So the SPD would recommend or expect a level of 32 off-street spaces, whereas 9 are provided. It should be noted that this is a very sustainable area. There are a number of bus routes that run along Copner Road with bus stops in the immediate vicinity. There are line bikes and voice scooters provided literally outside of the entrances, and a very comprehensive travel plan has been submitted. I won't go through all of the points raised or the things that will be provided through the travel plan, but there are a number of different aspects that seek to encourage more sustainable means of travel to and from the site. I would also note to members the climate emergency declarations and clean air initiatives that the council as a whole have adopted, which obviously, among other things, seeks to reduce reliance on private car ownership. Design has also been raised quite a lot in the objections, so mainly around the sort of height and the scale of it. It's obviously quite a large building. Again, I would just reiterate that we think it's pretty successful in its execution. While it is taller, the stepping back of the higher parts of the building and the stepping in from the boundary, fairly successful, we believe, in reducing its sense of scale and bulk. And while not in the immediate vicinity, there are some examples of larger corner site buildings on Copner Road around 300 metres to the south. So there you can see some flats which are around 3.5, 4 stories near the Chichester Road sort of area. And there's also a care home slightly further along on the Queen's Road junction. So it's not completely out of character that we would allow a larger building on a big corner site, and certainly it's an urban design sort of feature that you would expect a larger building on a large corner site that sort of bookends the surrounding area. So impact on the neighbours, obviously the immediate neighbours on Copner Road and Stubbington Avenue would be the most affected by this scheme. To the Stubbington Avenue, so 228 Stubbington Avenue is the property that's adjacent to the site effectively. So we're fairly happy that the building is broadly within the same building line as that house. So we don't think there'll be too much of an impact on things like outlook and sense of enclosure. You can see we've annotated on the site plan in the slide that, you know, looking out from the rear of that property, you're not really going to see the building unless you're facing it. So it's off to the east as well. There would be more of an impact on the property on Copner Road, so number 205 Copner Road, being that the two-storey element of the property extends along much of their garden. So yeah, we have identified that there is harm arising from that, but given that it's set away from the boundary by 1.5 metres, it steps down to two stories there, and given the orientation of the windows, we don't think it amounts to significant harm in terms of what would be needed to be identified. Also, it's worth noting that the site is due north of that property, so there would be very, very limited natural sunlight blocked out by the development. So some of the objections also noted the density of the proposal, noting things like a proliferation of HMOs and flat conversions in the area. So effectively, they think that this is going to contribute to overly densely populated area. So we think this sort of site can accommodate this density. Impacts on things like dentists and doctors and stuff like that. We don't think this scheme of this size can be reasonably expected to accommodate for those things, and wouldn't materially affect them in of itself. So we don't think that could be defended as a reason for refusal. And then finally onto the affordable housing. Obviously very unfortunate that no affordable housing can be provided on the scheme. But the developer has done what they need to do to prove that they can't provide it, and obviously have, as a goodwill gesture, offered £20,000 as an off-site commuted sum. So again, that can be reasonably used as a reason for refusal. So just in conclusion, I think the headlines are a brownfield site in the city to provide housing. We need to be evidencing significant harm to warrant its refusal. We need to be affording significant weight to its approval as a brownfield site. We need to consider the tilted balance in the provision of new residential properties due to the lack of a 5-year housing land supply. We also need to note the HELA, the Housing and Economic Land Availability Assessment, which has identified this site as being able to accommodate 25 flats. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's go on to deputations. We have two. We have Mr. Cohen as agent and Benedict Swan as one of the local councillors. Ben, do you want to go first? Is that all right? Mr. Cohen, is that okay with you? Is that okay? Ben, Councillor Swan, sorry, let's be formal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whilst I welcome sensible development in Copner, I stand opposed to this application on the size and illogical nature of the development, coupled with the impact on traffic and safety in this part of the ward. The proposed development is a 5-storey building at a crossroads of 4 roads, with the usual type of Portsmouth 2-storey terrace houses being the preeminent style in the area. The only remotely comparable development would be Tivoli Court further south on Copner Road. But not only is Tivoli Court only 3 storeys, but it also has an element of parking to the rear in excess of what is proposed here, and does not overlook the properties behind in the same way that this development does. The plans for this development show only 7 parking spaces and 2 parking spaces for disabled residents. The development contains 25 separate properties, and even if we were to assume 25 cars would be associated with the development, and even that is likely to be a very low estimate, but if we do for a moment assume a minimum of 25 cars increase to an already incredibly congested area, we can assume for the purpose of this that 18 additional cars will park on Stubbington Avenue. From the junction, 18 cars would fill the roadside parking as far as Kensington Road. It also must be taken into consideration the properties with multiple bedrooms, and therefore factor in additional cars to that too. This committee hears a significant number of arguments regarding the impact of traffic and parking, which are always dismissed, but this cannot be waved away. Not only would we see a massive impact on parking in the area, but the location of the development would have an unavoidable knock-on effect on the road network, being as it is right on a hugely busy junction with Copner Road, one of the main arterial routes in and out of the city, a route used heavily by emergency services, and is, along with the Eastern Road, one of the routes most matchday fans utilise to get to Fratton Park, and also carries significant traffic over an extended rush hour period due to the proximity of 8 schools in the area, including 2 senior schools. The vehicular entrance to the property will be just as you turn into Stubbington Avenue from Copner Road. Not only will this cause congestion, as traffic waits for turning cars, but there's also the effect of delivery drivers making drop-offs to the development, which will stop right outside. And I know there's a provision for a lay-by, but in reality they will stop wherever they want to stop. Yeah, as I said, but there's also the effect of delivery drivers making drop-offs to the development that will stop right outside, right on the junction on a road that already sees regular conflict from drivers trying to travel east to west and vice versa. I've witnessed myself on several separate occasions physical altercations between drivers. This is only going to increase if this development is improved. The parking and traffic issues caused by a development such as this in the location will have a massive knock-on effect, not just in Copner, but in Fratton Ward, Nelson Ward, Hilsey Ward and Baffins Ward, as displaced drivers seek spaces further and further away. I'd also like to raise the question of what happens if there are more than 2 disabled residents who are also drivers. Where will the parking spaces go for these residents? Certainly not outside the entrance on the junction and clearly not on Copner Road. This isn't the only serious concern with this development. The configuration of the development means that properties in Stubbington Avenue and Copythorne Road are suddenly going to be seriously overlooked and lose a significant amount of natural light. In fact, I would go as far as saying the configuration of the building essentially creates an amphitheatre looking into neighbouring properties. This isn't just a house with a dormer, it's a significantly high development that will cast a shadow over neighbouring properties for large parts of the day, invade privacy and leave residents feeling like they're going to have their curtains closed permanently, and even worse, not be able to use their outdoor spaces. Studies have proven that open space and sunlight are key to helping to fight and ease mental health issues. And I speak from personal experience of mental health issues and how absolutely vital my small garden is as a refuge to me. This development will have a detrimental effect on a significant amount of Copner residents, and I stand with them wholeheartedly against it because it would be a deeply unfair imposition on residents already struggling with overcrowded, high-density areas, stretched public services, and have to park their cars even remotely close to their homes. This development is the wrong type of development in the wrong place, and for the good of the community in Copner, needs to be rejected.
Thank you, Councillor Swan. Mr. Cohen.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. So my name is James Cohen. I'm the planning agent representing this application and the applicant. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all today. Firstly, I'd like to thank your officers for their collaborative approach and detailed assessment, which has helped bring forward the well-considered scheme for determination. The site at 207 to 217 Copner Road is an allocated housing site in the Council's adopted and emerging plan, and is currently occupied by an underutilised industrial purpose. This application seeks permission to redevelop this brownfield plot with a high-quality residential development comprising 25 self-contained flats. The existing site is industrial in nature, situated within a predominantly residential context. It is entirely inappropriate for its location and has the potential to cause harm to the amenity of the local community. As the officer explained, at the moment it's completely unrestricted. Its replacement with a high-quality residential scheme is a clear planning betterment. The proposals have been subject to a robust design evolution. The original pre-app submission proposed a 4-storey building. However, at the specific request of your planning officers, the design was amended to introduce a 5th storey. This was to ensure effective use of the site, to respond to the site's allocated status for housing, to meet the pressing housing needs, and to reflect the scale and massing appropriate for this prominent corner location. The scheme uses the opportunities presented by the junction of Copner Road and Stubbington Avenue. The building is scaled upwards towards the corner to make a strong architectural statement, whilst sensitively stepping down towards the neighbouring properties to maintain an appropriate relationship with the surrounding built form. Architecturally, the design adopts a contemporary yet contextually appropriate and respectful approach. Traditional materials such as brickwork form the primary palette, tying the new building back to its established street scene, whilst modern elements bring a fresh and attractive appearance. The building's massing is broken down through careful modulation, recessed upper floors, and the material variation to ensure it sits comfortably in its setting. Importantly, the top floor is carefully recessed from the main facades, meaning it will be barely visible from the street level. The mass is being concentrated towards the corner, ensuring generous separation distances to neighbouring houses. Window positioning and internal layouts have been sensitively designed to avoid overlooking, ensuring the privacy and residential amenity for neighbours is respected. The conscious design approach minimises any sense of overbearing and ensures that the living environment for both existing and future residents will be of a high standard. The proposal also delivers significant environmental enhancements. The development incorporates a combination of green and blue roofs, providing direct benefits in terms of biodiversity, air quality, urban greening and sustainable surface water drainage, particularly with the current use and its lack of biodiversity considered. These elements will make a tangible contribution to the city's wider environmental objectives. In terms of transport, the site is extremely well served by sustainable travel. There are bus stops, minutes of walk away, offering frequent services to the city centre. Hilsea Station is also within a reasonable walking and cycling distance. A comprehensive network of cycle routes further improves connectability. Reflecting the site's sustainable location, 9 car parking spaces are proposed, slightly below the council's usual standard. This is a deliberate and positive step towards a more sustainable, low-car future, aligning with both local and national planning policies. Reducing car reliance is essential to creating more livable, less congested communities. And to support this shift, a detailed travel plan accompanies the application, and this includes measures such as personalised travel information packs, discounts for local bus and rail travel, and cycle voucher schemes, all designed to encourage the future residents to make sustainable travel choices. The 9 parking spaces will be prioritised for the larger 2- and 3-bedroom homes, recognising that these are more likely to be occupied by families who may have a greater reliance on private car use. And a parking management strategy, secured by condition, will govern the allocation and use of all of these spaces. Furthermore, all parking spaces will be equipped with electrical vehicle charging points, ensuring the development fully supports Portsmouth's transition to a cleaner, greener forms of transport. While a viability appraisal has demonstrated that on-site affordable housing could not viably be delivered, the applicant has nevertheless made a voluntary offer of £20,000 towards affordable housing provision elsewhere in Portsmouth, and this demonstrates the applicant's genuine commitment to supporting the wider needs of the city. Chair, members, this proposal represents precisely the sort of sustainable, well-designed and contextually sensitive redevelopment that Portsmouth needs. It optimises the use of an underutilised brownfield site in a residential area, strengthens the character and vitality of a prominent corner, and delivers tangible social, economic and environmental benefits. Given the city's urgent and ongoing need to boost housing delivery and the strong planning policy presumption in favour of sustainable development, I respectfully urge you to support this application today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, questions? Matthew.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cordy, sorry.
So basically, I've just got a question about the impact on neighbouring roads. We've heard that the entrance to the site is going to be moved from Copner Road to Stubbington Avenue. Currently, there's no right-hand turn into Stubbington Avenue from Copner Road when heading south. Vehicles would have to use roads such as Copythorne or Kensington Road to access Stubbington Avenue, effectively creating a rat run. Are there any plans to allow right-hand turns into Stubbington Avenue from Copner Road when heading south?
Not as part of this application, no. Obviously, it has been assessed in quite a lot of depth by our highways team. They're satisfied that 9 vehicles on the site, which is the provision of parking, wouldn't have a material impact on the surrounding roads. So yeah, no is the short answer.
Do you want a follow-up, Councillor Cordy?
No, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Atwell.
I wonder if I'm looking out my window, I'm on the top floor of the development, and I'm looking out my window into, sort of towards Stubbington Avenue. What can I see? How far is my view? I couldn't quite get that from the plans.
So it's set around, the windows on that rear elevation are set around 13 metres away from that boundary, which isn't sort of dissimilar to normal properties in Portsmouth. We think that the impact as a loss of privacy would not be significant. Obviously there will be a slight loss, but given the distance, we don't think it's significant.
That's right, well.
Is it entirely possible, probable, in fact, that I've just got this figure of 21 metres before that's come to committee.
So that is window to window.
Is it?
That is.
Is that window to window? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, I wonder if you could help me. The agent mentioned about the council's policy for car parking spaces, and I think he said it was below the 9 figures below what the council has in its policy. Could you tell us what that figure would be if it was the council's policy?
Sure. So it's not policy, it's guidance, so SPD guidance. That would be 32 expected spaces. 32 expected spaces.
Okay, any other questions? No, in terms of comments and proposals. I'm sorry, I'm going to take... oh, so you wanted a question, Councillor Dent?
My apologies. Yeah. Can we have some more information about these, the windows they're going to be using? Whether there's, I've no idea what that means. Why what the sort of distance they can see out, what people can see in. I'd assume there's some sort of opaque glass or whatever. If you can give us some more information on that, would be nice.
Sure. So the main concern with windows in terms of overlooking and loss of privacy would be the south-facing windows looking southerly towards the property on Copner Road, so 205 Copner Road. We're requiring those to be obscure glazed through condition.
What about the ones that are looking over the other side of Copner Road? Because if you read some of the objections that basically people are saying that they're going to be overlooked from 3 stories up, 4 stories up, and then basically they're going to have their curtains closed at all times.
So there aren't any windows facing windows in this development. So the windows on the rear elevation would be, what do you mean on the other side of Copner Road? That's a fairly regular distance for residential properties in Portsmouth. It's quite a wide junction, so any sort of development on this site would have a similar impact. And we're not concerned that there would be an unacceptable loss of privacy.
So basically you're saying that basically from across the Copner Road, across to those properties opposite them, then basically from those windows they cannot be looked into those properties? Because
no, I think they can be, but
exactly.
But that the existing buildings just south of it would do exactly the same. Is that right, Ed?
Yeah, indeed. Obviously, we've identified a number of impacts, and we've given them appropriate weight in the planning balance. But I think, especially that relationship between the properties on either side of Cotton Road is a very sort of well-established relationship already. That's been the way in most streets in Portsmouth since all those properties were built.
And
Mr.
Chair, just to add as well, in the national design guidance, it states there should be no minimum distances between windows across a street.
Okay. All right. Comment. Are you wanting the question, Councillor Atwell? Yeah. Leap in.
What are the storage arrangements for people who have mobility, who need additional mobility aids?
Is there a buggy store?
No, I don't believe there is a specific buggy store. The ground floor flats, I believe, are designed in such a way that they can be accessed by lesser abled people, but there aren't any specific disabled arrangements, as you'd see on some of the larger sites that have specific sort of social housing. There are obviously different levels of disability provision in terms of how the interior is designed, but that isn't the case on this scheme, so there isn't any specific provision for that sort of thing.
Councillor Jeffrey?
Yeah, thanks. Is there any provision for, I couldn't see, but was there any provision for bike spaces at all?
Sorry, I should have mentioned there's an over-provision of cycle storage, 44 spaces.
Okay. Comments and proposals. I'm going to use Chair's discretion to go first. It's inevitable that this site will go for residential development, and there's no point pretending otherwise. My concern with this is it's just too big. If this had come in with 1 story less across, then I think I would have accepted it. I'm sorry if the applicant has been given the suggestion by planning officers to add stories, because I think that would be against what I would want. So I think this clearly contravenes our policy in terms of massing. It is too big on that site. The other blocks nearby, the other things nearby are 3-storey, 2.5-storey, or 2-storey, and this at this highest point is 5-storey, which in my view is too big, and the loss of light to people in Stubbington Avenue from having a particularly morning light from having a building of 5 stories just to the east of them, I think is not good. If there had been affordable housing as part of that, then maybe we'd have been able to balance that off. But there isn't, so there's no positives for the community out of this. And I think then the lack of parking is a real problem. We know that people will have cars. We know in the last 10 years we've got 10,000 more cars in Portsmouth than we'd had a decade before. We know that when the previous Labour government brought in things to say we shouldn't have parking standards, all that happened is with the new developments, they built them without enough car parking, and then people had to go and park in everybody else's roads. So it seems to me that this development, there will be a development of residential on this site, and I think that's probably welcome. But in my view, this is too big and with too little car parking, and therefore I'm going to propose refusal of this application.
Happy to second, Chair.
I think Councillor Cordy was about to say the same. But Councillor Dent, you have a pink shirt, so you trump him.
Hello, Chair. Sorry. I was just going to say that I think the proposal's overbearing and overdevelopment, and that combined with a lack of parking provision, I'm inclined to agree with you. Also, I noticed that on page 34, they talk about a short walk to Hilsey train station. Now, I looked on Google Maps last night, and that's a 22-minute walk, so I don't believe that is a short walk.
To a train station which has almost no train stopping at it. It's a halt. But it's still a station, Russell. So, and no heckling from the cheap seats, please. Mr. Turner.
Thank you. Just wanted to come back on those points, if I may. Right, with respect to scale, we can have the slides up, please, Lisa. I'm absolutely convinced, and officers are absolutely convinced, that this development will be accepted visually within the local character without any harmful effects. This is a large junction, open and spread out, that can easily accommodate, or can readily accommodate, taller buildings. This is a gap site, effectively. I just want to remind members, this is a bad neighbour site. This is unrestricted industrial use. They can operate all day and all night, all sorts of clanking and clanging going on, vehicles coming and going. It's unrestricted. This proposal is to replace that with a good neighbour, a residential development providing much needed affordable housing. We've got some photographs here showing the scale of the junction, how wide it is. You've got 3 lanes certainly, and dividers and so on. There's a 3-storey development opposite. This development will be 4-storey plus roof. We can go to the elevations in a minute. So I'm absolutely convinced a 4-storey plus roof on the corner there is to be expected, frankly, at a big open junction. It's an urban design effort to mark the junction. Similarly, on the view looking south, there's the 3-storey development, and you would have a 4-storey building here plus roof that I really don't feel would be over impactful on the neighbourhood. And I think someone who drove down here for the first time or walked by in 5 years' time, if it's development, wouldn't think a new building of that design and scale will be out of place. Moving on to the elevations, Ed's taken you through, and the report takes you through the modulation of the building. So that's what I mean by the 4 stories plus a roof. So you'd really read it as 4 plus a roof rather than the full 5. The recessed position of that flat on the top and the roofing type materials reads therefore as a roof rather than extra story. And then the building is successfully broken up with dropping down to the 2 stories next to 205 Copner Road, and then on Stubbington Road, the 3-storey next to the more substantial house there. It's broken up successfully by the step downs, the roofing materials, and the rhythm of the windows, sills and lintels with a different material, some stone material on the ground floor. I think this is a successful composition to break up the building and provide something that would look appropriate in the street. Just to remind members, it will be of brick construction, which is a massive boon, I think, for the development. It's brick in the area, predominantly red brick. The combination of materials and then design and articulation, I'm convinced, will produce a building that looks perfectly acceptable in that locality. That's talking about townscape. With respect to the neighbours, we have gone through the effects. We've not hidden away. There would be harms on 228 Stubbington, more limited, we feel, and more harm on 205. But the building's situated to the north, so it wouldn't cast any shadow on number 205. There would be a big flank wall, but it's slightly separated. It's stepped down to 2 stories. We've dealt with the privacy issues from the terraces and the windows. And importantly, neither neighbour has objected. I think that's significant. So the scheme has multiple benefits, from removing a bad neighbour use in the area, replacing it with much needed housing. Affordable housing, unfortunately, isn't possible apart from the goodwill gesture. It would remove some traffic, and HGV traffic, and the skips and so on that currently exists, because of the limited amount of parking means that there wouldn't be many comings and goings. The parking is a minor negative effect in officers' opinion, but there's a robust travel plan that would be in place to give incentives and encouragement and information to all the residents to buy a bike, and there's the bike stores where they can store it, to walk. Yes, you're right, it's about 20 odd minutes walk to Hilsea Station. That's walkable or cyclable, or anywhere else you want to go in the city. It's an excellent location with respect to employment and retail and other many local factors, some parks. There are individual terraces to 7 of the flats. You can see some of them here. There's one there on the ground floor and a communal terrace on the roof space, so there is space and greenery where residents can feel that they get some sort of amenity.
Simon, we have had the presentation. We don't need to go through twice.
There you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, and let's restrict this to members' comments now. Councillor Atwell.
I mean this to be sort of helpful, really, but I think it's difficult to come to this committee and describe 9 spaces as being slightly below 32 expected spaces that we might reasonably expect to see on here. I shall be voting in favour of this application.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor Shah.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, 2 points which are more important, especially in this area, very populated area, is parking. It will pressurize the area for more parking because the spaces are not even according to the guidance we got. And number 2, how affordable housing. That is also another big, which we can't miss it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Valade.
I'd like to put a motion forward to agree to this. Now, it's not ideal. Parking is a problem, but you will know that when you buy the flat. You know, people aren't stupid. If there's only 9 spaces, they're going to know it's going to be a problem to park, so they can choose to get their scooter out or their bike out, whatever. We need these flats. We need places for people to live. People need to live somewhere, and it's an issue. And I love the fact that there's so many 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom flats. So I'm going to say yes.
Okay, is there a second for Councillor Valade's proposal? There is not. Okay, therefore it'll fall. Any other comments, colleagues? Okay, so, and there is one proposal which from myself, which is for refusal, seconded by Councillor Dent, and we'll need to give you some reasons. So it is clearly, it's the massing, and
Can I
of course.
just suggest, obviously within the presentation, I said that we need to identify significant harm.
Yeah.
So
we have.
Yeah. So when you come through with the reasons for refusal, if we're going to.
So the significant harms are the massing of the property, is overbearing, the loss of light to neighbours, and the very significant lack of car parking provided. And I think should probably be put in twice, because it is very, very significant lack of car parking.
Right. Okay. And what's the harm arising from that? Is that
because then all the other cars that were not being provided for will be impacted on their neighbours, and because people will have cars.
Chair, your comments just then, you mentioned loss of light, I believe.
Yes, because clearly having a 5-storey building beside an area will mean that they lose morning light on the houses in Stubbington Avenue on the south side.
Okay, so my advice is not to go forward with that as a reason for refusal, because it's something that can be quantified, and once it's quantified and we don't have a case to prove that it is harmful, then we will likely lose that, and we will likely be awarded costs against us for unreasonable behaviour. So light, be very, very careful.
Fine, and I think that's useful advice.
Okay. Yeah, be very, very careful with just
No.
presuming that there is a loss of light.
No,
It's a measurable thing.
It's always sensible to take advice. So it'd be the massing being overbearing, and the very, very significant lack of car parking. Okay, can I see those in favour of that proposal, please show. Those against, please show. Okay, planning permission is denied. Thank you. Let's move on to 36 Chichester Road. So this is on page 43 of the report. This is coming back to us because there was a concern about whether there was an unregistered HMO at the when we looked at this last. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Simon, is this yourself? No, David.
Chair, it's myself, thank you. Yes, so as you'll recall, this is deferred from the previous meeting and a scheme for the change of use of the property from a C3 dwelling house to a 7-person HMO. So you see the property on the Ordnance Survey map there, and on the aerial view, so mid-terrace property next to the end terrace with quite a sizable length garden. In terms of the property itself, very typical of the area, this bay-fronted mid-terrace. So this is the existing appearance of the property. So as part of the scheme, the dwelling will be extended. In terms of its existing layout, it's, again, a fairly typical 3-bed layout with the rear wing, 2-storey rear ring. And as part of the proposals, the property will be extended. So there'll be, we'll just pop back a slide, so thank you. So there'll be a dormer added as permitted development, and a rear extension added as well. So in terms of the internal layout, that results, again, it's a fairly typical layout that we see with 2 ensuite bedrooms on the ground floor, communal living kitchen space, 3 ensuite bedrooms to the first floor, and 2 ensuite in the roof. So the principal issue turns on the, as a creation of a new HMO, the test in our SVD in relation to mixed and balanced communities, and whether there are more than 10% of the properties in the area are HMOs. So have you got the slide on that? We've gone past that. Oh, apologies for that. It's disappeared off the presentation. I can't quite understand how that's happened. So
it would be a bit wet, Mary.
In relation to the information in the I'll just go to the report. Thank you, Simon. Apologies, we don't know where that slide had gone. So, as you can see on the slide there, as a newer HMO, that would bring the proportion to 4 properties within out of 43 in the area, so that 9.3%. So that is below your 10% threshold, beyond which a community is considered to be imbalanced. So prior to the considering the application on the 2nd of April, we received an allegation that was made that there may be a HMO at number 52, which fall within that 50-metre radius and would make a difference to the proportion in the bottom of that slide. The publicity on the application had run from the 14th of February, with no allegation having been made of a HMO at that address until 1 day before the 2nd of April Planning Committee. No evidence was supplied of the purported HMO. Notwithstanding the late raising of the issue, before the 2nd of April meeting, officers had provided substantial verbal evidence at the meeting of the property not being a HMO, and there also not being any evidence of it having been a HMO. And this was relayed at the meeting, and this data is all set out in your updated committee report. Plus, even if it had become a HMO since it was last sold in 2017, it wouldn't have become lawful by the passage of time, and therefore it still doesn't affect the HMO data on the slide in front of you. Nonetheless, the application was still deferred. Since the meeting, we've contacted the owners and they've confirmed the property is not HMO. And since the meeting, no evidence has been supplied that the property is HMO. So, Chair, we are exactly where we were 4 weeks ago. From our very strong advice is that the data on that slide is correct, and we do not have any grounds to refuse the application for that reason. And the application is still recommended for approval, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We have a representation. So, Mr. Bundy, would you like to go first? Are you speaking for your mum, or is your mum likely to want to talk directly?
For mum.
Okay, lovely.
Okay, so as you all know, we are immediately next door to this proposal. Now, I was going to run through the 15 valid reasons in the committee report today in section 6.3 that discuss many of the issues to refuse this. Parking, and we already heard from the earlier application, this has 7 people, 7 cars. Overdevelopment of the site and so on. All valid reasons to refuse it. But instead, today, I wanted to just focus on 2 points. Now, as you know, this was deferred from the 2nd of April, partly because it doesn't consider 52, which is currently a bedsit HMO. Now, what I'd like to do is really see the difference between today's committee report and last time, and it's very little. All I can find different, which the planners are putting forward, is 8.16, and it states that the owner of the property has been contacted and they confirm 52 is not an HMO. Well, did the council expect the owner to look up and say it was and open themselves up to a fine? Quite frankly, the planners are scrambling for evidence. For example, they say the house once had a lounge and kitchen and therefore can't be an HMO. Well, the proposal for 36 today has a lounge and kitchen, and it clearly definitely is an HMO. It's been put forward as an HMO. So what I've got here is some photos of the bedsit at 52, and if I'm permitted just to pass them around.
Yeah, you'll be very welcome to do that, but you won't get them back.
So I'll just wait a couple of seconds while they go around.
I'd keep going.
Okay. So what do we see as neighbours? We see multiple occupants, unrelated to each other, going in and out of this premises. We see occupants using their own keys, and also the key safe. You can see there's a key safe just underneath the light. And just next to the key safe is a commercial closed-circuit TV sign. I've never seen one of them on a family home before. And if you look outside in the forecourt, there's 4 wheelie bins. Yes, 4 wheelie bins. I've never seen that many wheelie bins for a family home. So I think we have to accept that 52 is an HMO. And as an HMO, that means that 36 will take the HMO count to 11.6%. That's well above the 10% rule. Now, planners are desperate to claim a difference between legal and illegal HMOs. But the SPD, section 8.8 in the committee report, doesn't discriminate. It simply says, where more than 10% of the residential properties are in HMO use. So there's no hierarchy of HMOs. Whether an HMO is legal or illegal is irrelevant. So I'm going to move on to the second point today, and that's impact on neighbours. Now, 36 is going to be demolished to enable this to happen, to build this large three-storey structure. So there's going to be noise, there's going to be dust, there's going to be vibration, there's going to be disruption. So where does Mum, sitting here today, where does she fit into this? She can't stand. She can't get out of this wheelchair. She can't leave the house for a break. Her care plan, a care plan set up by medical people, involves carers, involves moving equipment, and that leaves her day in, day out, 9 inches away from a building site. Can you guys imagine that? 9 inches away. So how does the council propose to resolve this? Under the Human Rights Act 98, Article 8 clearly stipulates the council is under a legal obligation and is legally bound to protect Mum's right to a home life. If Mum was in a care home, she would be moved. Logical decision, move her to another ward if there was building at the care home. If Mum was in a council house, she would be relocated. So we look to you today as representatives of Portsmouth City Council to do the right thing and to uphold Article 8 of the Human Rights Act by refusing this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bundy. Okay, Councillor Hunt.
Well, comparing the mood in the room today, which as I referred to earlier as demob happy, this is a very grave situation, particularly for Mrs. Bundy. I think that to hear from her son, from what I can make out, Mrs. Bundy can't speak or communicate in any way. She is you can see she's confined to a wheelchair. And I think he makes an overwhelmingly powerful argument as to describing the terrible impact on Mrs. Bundy, who will have to sit there day in and day out for goodness knows how long with this terrible commotion and noise going on, as Mr. Bundy describes, the other side of a brick wall. I don't know about you, but just sometimes people being outside talking is irritating, or the foxes barking at this time of the year. But you're going to have industrial tools, demolition, lorries showing up. And I just ask you to turn round and look at Mrs. Bundy. And I'm not being emotional here. I'm not trying to emotionally impact this hearing. We are looking at facts of a human being. And she's getting on in her years. And it's really so important that you should turn this down because of the terrible and adverse impact on Mrs. Bundy next door. I think that a planning inspector actually would agree, because I'm focusing this on Mrs. Bundy. I'm not focusing on anything else, on the lack of planning or lack of parking. But even so, the officers actually in your report invite you to consider the lack of parking and people hunting for spaces, as they say, as they go around. This isn't just noise and disturbance. This is a building site, as Mr. Bundy says, right next door. And she cannot go anywhere to get away from it. Can you imagine your life stuck indoors, unable to move, unable to even scream and shout and go out and protest if this noise was going on, notwithstanding all the noise from the guys doing all the work? I think it should be turned down for these reasons, for the terrible impact on the residential amenities of Mrs. Bundy and her quality of life. And then it can come back some other time in the future, but not now. And I think a planning inspector would be hugely sympathetic to this. Why would one imprison an elderly, infirm lady in her home in this way? I don't think any of you want to do it, and I think that you should refuse it. And if you're minded to grant it, to put yourself in her shoes. And I think that you should, if somebody else is going to ignore the clear and obvious difficulty for Mrs. Bundy, then let some government planning inspector decide it. Spend 20 grand or whatever the cost might be for the reasoning, but don't, as ordinary elected residents in Portsmouth, impose such a terrible imprisonment by way of noise and disturbance and health issues on an already infirm elderly woman. I think it is an exceptional case, and I think that you should approach this in an exceptional way. I know you think you're constrained by national planning policy framework and the utterings of ministers about having strong harm. This is a strong harm that will be caused next door to Mrs. Bundy. I think you have every good reason to turn this down here this morning. I'm sorry to put you all on the spot and to trigger not an emotional response, but a practical one for an elderly, infirm woman. And I have made the case. I hope that you've responded to it. I hope that you will refuse it for all those reasons that I've described. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hunt. Carrie-Anne Wells.
Thank you. Before I start, I just want to address a couple of concerns from Mr. Bundy. He mentioned parking as one of his first worries. So we manage a portfolio of HMOs in Portsmouth. I just wanted to let you know that average car ownership for 7-bed HMO is just 3 cars. And I think that would be fairly usual for extended family homes. So I don't believe that the impact of 7 cars that the neighbour is worrying about is actually going to be a realistic concern. I hear what you're saying about the building works, and that is unfortunate, and anybody can do residential of their property, can do building works of their property, and there is going to be an impact on the neighbour, and that can't be avoided. But I wanted to stress that the builder who will be carrying out the works on this property is the most considerate builder we have ever worked with as a company, and I know he will be as respectful as he can be during the build. I've seen him wash neighbours' cars, I've seen him get his lads out tidying their gardens, and he is the most considerate builder that we have worked with. I do have all the sympathy in the world for Mrs. Bundy, and it is going to be a difficult time, but I can assure them that it will be done as quickly as possible. I don't believe that this is a reason for refusal. That would be upheld at appeal. With regards to the property, I went through the merits of the proposal last or earlier on in the month, so I won't bore you all with that again. I just wanted to stress again, it's a fully compliant application that meets all of your required space standards. You've been advised by the Plan Officer presenting today that the allegation was not correct about the alleged HMO in the area, and the policy does not breach the 10% density and is fully compliant with policy. My concern about this is it's the second time members have decided to defer an application to find an illegal HMO. It's not sending the right message to anyone involved in owning or wanting to own a HMO property. The illegal HMO should not be rewarded by being included in the density. The right thing to do would be to decide the application before you with the information you were given, and any illegal HMOs, if that is the case, should absolutely have enforcement action taken against them. If anyone from anywhere can write an objection stating there is a legal HMO in the area, officer investigations are then ignored and applications are deferred. This is costing the applicant further time and money in a delay that should not be happening for a fully compliant proposal. And this has an impact on both the applicant and Portsmouth City Council in the time, cost and delay and the additional workload this involves for all. Again, I want to stress that it's fully compliant with policy, and I ask that you approve the application today in line with the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Carrie-Anne. Okay, members' questions. So I have a question. We've heard a lot about the building work that is proposed here. Can I ask if this planning application is turned down, can the applicant do the building works even though we've turned it down under permitted development rights?
Yes. So, Chair, members need to be clear. The planning application is for a change of use of the property, not for the building work shown on the plans. Those don't need planning permission.
Okay, Councillor Dent.
Yeah, as I wasn't at the last meeting, there's a couple of points. Bedroom 2, do we know the size of the hallway or the area of the hallway? Is it more than 1.61 square metres? And also, bedroom 4 is a dead 10 square metres, but that is not 10 square metres of usable space by any stretch of the imagination. With 2 doorways, it's nearer sort of like 9.
David?
So, Chair, let's take bedroom 4. It really is usable space because at the point that you open the door and you close the door, it's usable space again. You open the door to the ensuite, you close the door, it's all usable space. So I can't see how we would defend that argument. In terms of, is it bedroom 5 with the corridor or bedroom 2? 2, apologies. Again, that's comfortably over the 10 square metres, and we do measure these things, and we do allow for those corridors in terms of that usable space, but we're confident that it complies with the space standards, Chair.
Councillor Dent?
It didn't really answer the question. Do we know what the area of that hallway is?
In bedroom 2, so between the opening of the door and the area past where the ensuite is.
Okay. If you leave us, I'm sure my colleague Biases can measure that, but it won't help you with your decision making, Chair.
Well, we have to be the judge of that David. Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Jeffrey?
Would it be useful for you to tell us why you think it wouldn't be useful for us to?
Well, if so in terms of the space standard refers to the size of the rooms. So at the point that the room meets the space standard in the SPD, that's our guidance. If we've adopted guidance and we said we need a room to be of this size, and then the scheme comes to us, which is this size, then an applicant should have confidence that we'll approve it, and hence why we recommended for approval. So, yes, my colleagues just confirmed in terms of the space excluding the corridor is 10.5 still, so we're still over even if you exclude the corridor. I'll ask them to measure the corridor as well, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor North.
So going back to the last meeting and number 52 Chichester Road, obviously we asked the question about is it a lawful, unlawful one, stuff like that. And we asked, obviously we had the paperwork out stating that they're paying council tax for a house. Have officers actually been out and visited and not just done phone calls, or is it just done phone calls and going back through the electoral register?
Chair, the property is owned by a homeless charity that helps people get off the street and provides them with accommodation on a temporary basis, but it is not a HMO. And we have really not wanted to put that into the public forum, but it seems that our assurances that the property is not a HMO don't seem to be sufficient, but the property is not a HMO.
So, David, my understanding of a definition of an HMO is 3 or more unrelated adults living in a property. Are you able to reassure people here?
Yes, Chair.
That there are below 3 adults, unrelated adults living in the property?
No, in relation to the particular use, it's not a HMO. So the charity is not caught by those. This is why we've discussed with the owners to establish the point about their use of the property, how they use it, how they help people get off the street who are homeless. But it is not a HMO.
So, sorry, David, to labour this. So, what does that have a different planning definition, because if it's not a family
Yes,
house.
they're exempt. Yeah, it's exempt.
It's exempt from what?
From being an HMO.
But so what's its planning definition then? It's not a family house. If it's not an HMO, is it defined as a hostel or what?
No. Within the scope of it, the likelihood is it's within Class C3 still, but Class C3B rather than C3A. So it's not within Class C4, which is a test, or a sui gen HMO. So that's the thing that you need to know, because that's what the policy is telling you. Once you get over 10% of HMOs, not other uses, only HMOs, that's the test.
So what is the name of that particular class that you say it's in?
Class C3B, Chair.
Does that have a name, or it's just a number?
2 seconds while I just find this. So with C3B, covers up to 6 people living together as a single household and receiving potential care, supported housing schemes such as those for learning disabilities or mental health problems. So that still falls within C3 use, not a C4 as a HMO.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? Councillor Atwell.
Do we only measure mixed and balanced communities by the 10% rule, or are there other ways in which we can understand what constitutes a mixed and balanced community?
So I think this is in relation to what our SPD says in terms of restricting HMOs, and the way we do that is to define that above a 10% threshold would tip it into being not a mixed and balanced community. David, is there any other definition of a mixed and balanced community?
For the purposes of determining your planning application, we set that out in the SPD, the HMO supplementary planning document. So that's our adopted document that describes what we consider to be a mixed and balanced community. Mixed and balanced community is in the policy wording, and then how we will assess that is set out in this sort of mathematical terms in the SPD. So the only criteria is whether there is more than 10% of properties within that 50-metre search radius is our HMO. So we can't change the goalposts on what our SPD says. We've adopted that document. That's what we need to go by, Chair.
Okay, any other questions, colleagues? Okay, comments and proposals? Councillor Shah.
It's not a question, actually, just a comment. I think some information will need to stay with the staff or can't be published publicly. And I think that was one of, we did have in the past as well something like this we discussed today. So I think that was supposed to stay behind the public.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cordy.
I'm afraid I have to disagree with that. I think that information is quite helpful to us, and I applaud Dr. Bundy and Councillor North for drawing that information out.
Okay, are there any proposals of what to do going forward? So, I'm sorry, I came here expecting to propose that this should go through on the basis that the 10% rule had not been breached. I'm in now a difficulty because I think having a property where 6 unrelated adults are living, I think breaks the meaning of what that SPD meant to do, and I think it would be sensible for the planning inspector to be the person who rules on that. Therefore, I will propose saying to refuse planning permission on the basis that there are already over 10% of houses in multiple occupation within within that 50-metre radius. Councillor Atwell, you waved. Okay. So Councillor Atwell is seconding that. Okay, I think it. Let's have a see where we go. But and I know that the planning officers would agree with you, Ms. Wells. But so that is. Are there any other proposals, Councillor Vallely?
I propose we pass it.
And Councillor Shah, you're going to second that. Okay, so so can I see the first proposal was for refusal?
Chair,
Sorry,
sorry, before you go to a vote, please describe actually what your reason for refusal is.
So that the proposal for an HMO here breaches the 10% threshold of for a mixed and balanced community, because number 52 is in use as a house where 6 unrelated adults are living.
So, Chair, that I'm telling you that's incorrect. So your reason is incorrect and it will fail. So I can't advocate that the committee makes such a decision where we know knowingly that information is incorrect. We can't rewrite what the HMO SPD says because we have sympathy for an applicant or whatever the reasons are. The reasons have to be what are in the SPD. So that reason is not in an SPD. It doesn't say or if there's any C3B uses as well. It talks about HMOs. So you can only make a decision on that basis, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure colleagues will have heard. So there are 2 proposals on the table which members are able to vote for. The first one is to refuse. Can I see those in favour? Please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against, please show. 3, that is a smaller number. Therefore, planning permission is refused. Okay, colleagues, can I suggest we use... I'm sorry, Chris, I apologise for following in your footsteps. Can I suggest we do the Royal Beach Hotel next? We've got a member of the public who is not paid to be here, while Councillor Simpson is paid to be here. And I know you've been paid too much, I know. But there is a member of the public here, and therefore I think it is polite if we go to the Royal Beach Hotel next. Is that, colleagues, are you okay with that? Okay. So, Royal Beach Hotel, which is on page 99, colleagues.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, thank you, Chair. So this is a scheme at the Royal Beach Hotel for the conversion of the existing redundant hotel to 31 residential units and provision of a new 6-storey building comprising 26 residential units following demolition of existing northern buildings and outbuildings to the back. And the scheme proposes landscaping, parking, access and other associated works. Just some matters to highlight from the SMAT update that you'll have had today. Principle 1 is just to highlight that the Environment Agency have now withdrawn their holding objection that they had. Sorry for the last minute, we were waiting on them to produce that for us. And also just to highlight in the SMAT that we confirm having made the assessment on the sequential test in relation to flood risk at the site, we consider that is met, bearing in mind a reasonable search area for alternative sites, the extent to which that reasonable search area is also in similar flood risk areas, and the extent to which any preferable sites are also dependent on long-term flood defences as well. Just a couple of extra points from the SMAT, just to highlight para 8.19, apologies, where we've clarified that the tilted balance also affected by assessing flood risk at heritage assets as well as habitat sites. Note the amendments to the conditions, which also includes revisions to the flood and drainage conditions following the EA's advice, and just an apology, there's a reference to the Milton Neighbourhood Plan in Para 8 1.24. It's not within the neighbourhood plan area. So this is a site, as you see, very prominent location within the city, opposite the pier, former hotel. Just to highlight a couple of things, because it comes up in relation to some of the aspects about the planning history and the issues of affordable housing, but the site was previously in effect an east wing and a west wing. Now the east wing has been developed separately and is in the process of being extended and converted, and this scheme relates solely to the west wing over there. So in terms of the existing property, so this is a prominent and significant feature on the seafront. You'll see very much dating from the Victorian era. You can see the significant features of the building in terms of its canted bays and those railings. As you turn down onto Alhambra Road, you can see the scale, that's top right, and you can see the scale of buildings that we have in the vicinity, both opposite and within this, on the site itself. As we go down to bottom left, the building that you can see most clearly in the front of the photo will be demolished as to allow for the northern separate wing to be built. So that's where that location will be. And you can see the generally high scale of development in the area. And just on the top left photo, just to highlight in the top right of that particular view, that's the east wing, which has been raised in height and extended as part of its planning permission. So just for some more views, showing you the relationship with neighbouring properties. So top left is looking down Mansion Road. You've got a 3-storey block of flats on the left-hand side, which face the site. And then that is where the northern block will be built. So that's, as Simon's shown you, up at the top there. And then down the bottom, you're looking down Alhambra Road towards the sea, and you can see the existing properties and the terrace along Alhambra Road there, going up to Savoy House. So there's some lengthy history related to the property that we try to set out in the report. Principles that you need to know that a long time ago we accepted the principle of the loss of the hotel and its conversion to residential as far back as 2007, this scheme. And also, this scheme also sought to raise the property by a floor and rebuild the mansard roofs, in effect creating the scale of property that you can see there. So going back some time, we've accepted the principle of the building being extended and converted to residential. And likewise, going back a similar length of time, we have also accepted the principle of a building block on that northern part of the site, wrapping around the corner of the junction of Mansion and Alhambra. And that's the scale of the scheme shown in middle from 2002. But this gives you an idea of the extent of development which we've previously been committed to on the site. And you'll note when we get to the elevations that this is a scaled back development in comparison to those previous approvals. And so this is the proposed layout. So you're not looking north to south on this plan, just in case you're confused. So the front of the building is over here. That's part of the building overlooking the seafront. And then at the bottom of the plan is Alhambra Road going up, and then Mansion Road there. So main part of the scheme, conversion of the existing historic hotel building here. That's you see that set out the number of units that we've got, so 31 within the historic Victorian building, and then 26 units in the block to the north. Within the site, the scheme provides 20 car parking spaces. I was struggling counting these, but where that blue arrow is in the centre, there's a parking space under there. That's where if you've been counting them and couldn't find the extra one, that's where the 20 spaces are. So the surface spaces set out through the site and part under Croft. And I should also add that we've got substantial cycle spacing, parking spaces provided within the scheme, both for the new build there and then within the existing historic building there. So in terms of layout, this is a residential layout for the conversion of the building. This utilises the sort of low ground floor and upper ground floor. You'll see in the report, and just one thing to highlight, these are sort of upside down in their accommodation to meet the advice from the Environment Agency due to potential issues of flood risk with the lower ground floors, so that the bedroom spaces are on the upper ground floor that you can see. So those are all in effect maisonettes, two-storey units, which is why the layout is like that. Moving up the building, you have a more traditional layout of the flats, which again utilises the building well, keeps many of the existing interior walls, which you can see shown on there because they're fairly substantial. And then moving up the building, we get into the third and fourth. By the time of the fourth floor, you're into the new build, which is why you've got those sort of narrower partition walls between. You can see that there throughout the building we do have two stair cores, so there's separate ways in and out of the building in the event of a worst case scenario in fire. And then up onto the top floor, this is a new mansard roof where you can see that we have some terraces provided for the properties. Can you just skip back one slide? Apologies, Simon. One thing is also is that the scheme has minimised the number of units that are single aspect and north facing. So the overwhelming majority of units in the scheme are dual aspect, and so will benefit from light and outlook from various times of the day. Let's just skip on the next one. So this is how the building will be viewed from the front elevation now. Part of the report, you see, we do address this issue of the decorative railings on the existing part of the building. Clearly, they're a feature of the building. They don't actually structurally serve as balcony spaces, so they're not never been able to be used from that, as I understand it. The scheme, we accept that as a potential negative, but nonetheless, your conservation officer has not objected to the scheme. The proposals will replace those with a more modern approach and also provide some balcony spaces to some of the units that you can see there, and then on the floors down. Okay, next one. So the view from Alhambra Road, not significant change here. You can see the additional floor and roof extension on the top there, but the main part of the building largely converted as is. In terms of the north wing, this is the wholly new build, so there's parking spaces. Chair, it's really, really unhelpful when I'm trying to present if people are just talking away in the background. And if thank you.
So, George Russell, if you're going to talk, we'll separate you, as at school.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the layout in terms. So your entrance, your main parking entrance, will be off Mansion Road into the site here, where there's a number of surface spaces, including disabled parking spaces, as well as bin and bike stores there. So the
David, we still got chatting going on behind. If you're able to keep quiet, please stay. If you're not, please go. Carry on, David.
Thank you, Chair. So the the ground floor has been amended as part of the scheme. Originally, it was just shown as undercroft parking on the Alhambra Road entrance, which would be really poor frontage for the property with lack of activity. So part of the scheme has amended that to show these entrances and user space, but also it addresses issues of the flood risk to that that ground floor as a building. So again, this is more typical layout, and again the scheme works well to avoid the possibility of single aspect north-facing flats. We've only got that in the one in the middle there for the first to third floor, so that's 3 units out of the total of the scheme. The remainder have southerly, easterly, westerly aspects or dual aspects, and will benefit from acceptable light and outlook. All part of the all units meet the space standards, and you'll also see that we have quite a mix of bedrooms in terms of sizes, and certainly a larger number of larger properties than we had in previous approvals on the site. So we consider all of those to be beneficial parts of this particular scheme. So there's a slightly different approach in design and material terms for this building to provide a contrast. Doesn't seek to simply replicate the Victorian Hotel, but we pick up on many of the good qualities of the area. There's use of brick for the majority of the building, and again, that's a really strong point for the property. We feel that it will last and is sensible for an exposed marine environment as well, but also incorporating modern features that you can see in the materials list on there. But I've given you some idea of the scale. Again, you've got this articulation with the top floor being set in, but as you've seen from the photos, the scale of building is very much along this line anyway, so we're certainly not pushing at any characteristics of the area. Is very much a densely and high scale part of the seafront. Just these, again, this shows how the scheme works its way around and continues the design criteria on. And it's just a cross-section through, so this shows how the units are arranged with the podium parking, ground floor entrances, and there, and then you've got this southern elevation above, which looks back towards the hotel. So this is what it looks like in the street scene. So the top is your Mansion Road street scene, where it sits behind the main hotel, and you can see that actually the north wing is of a lesser scale than most of the surrounding properties. When looking down on Alhambra Road, it's managing a successful step down in scale as we move along the road till we get to lower, more domestic scale as further down we get to 3 to 4 story properties. So we're getting a reasonable step down. Apologies that this was done, requested at a late stage, and it's not as clear as we would hope, but this is overlaying the current proposal, which is the red, which is sort of faded out a little bit red, against the previous schemes that have been approved on the site. And the principle is just to show that we're achieving either identical or similar or improvements in the building to building distances. And so in terms of what we've previously committed to on the site, their scale and those impacts of the buildings we're satisfied with, because in effect they're limited differences from what we've previously accepted. So just finally, some CGIs, but we've got, as I say, there's been a couple of amendments since these original CGIs were done. So the top floor has been amended in its design, so it's not quite as bold as it is in that CGI view. But other than that, it gives you a good flavour of the scheme as done. And then if we just on the far side. And then again, since the CGI is done, we've secured amendments to the scheme which take away that podium parking from this part of the elevation on the Alhambra Road to the bottom right, which gives us, Chair, we feel a much better frontage for that street, and much more activity and much less risk to those parked cars as well. Chair, I'm happy to answer any further questions on the scheme, but we recommend the scheme for approval as set out in the report.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we have deputations next. Mr. Blackford. The chair, the floor is yours, Mr. Blackford.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name's David Blackford, and I live at Mansion Court in Granada Road, Southsea. Now, Mansion Court is a retirement complex, and it shares a rear access road, that of Mansion Road, with the Royal Beach development. As a group, my fellow residents and I supported Zenda Limited in the development of their East Wing project, and to a certain extent, we support Zenda Limited in the development of the West Wing project, but we totally object to the proposed build of the North Wing project. The East and West Wings are sensible advantages as, for whatever reason or reasons, Zenda Limited unfortunately decided not to continue the site as a hotel with its wonderful bar and restaurant facilities, but the conversion to apartments is a suitable alternative, we think. Now, if we look at these two wings, the number of accommodation units, East and West, totals 60. Now, my main concern, and those of my fellow residents, is that of parking. Now, with the previous hotel parking spaces, they totaled approximately 26 in the north car park and 3 to 5 at the front of the hotel. Now, looking at the plans for the developed parking of East and West, I would say that they would produce the same amount of spaces, so roughly 30. So we have one space for every 2 apartments. What if every apartment does not have a car, I hear you say? Well, fair enough, the ratio becomes even better. But I would say that apartments of the price that is being shown, and in the region of, say, 500,000 to just under £1 million, 2 to 3 bedrooms, there is likely to be a likelihood of many units having more than one car. So although some may not have a car, others may have more than one car. So I think we could be looking at, say, 20 to 25 vehicles requiring street parking from the East and West units. Then, of course, we have visitors, contractors' vehicles, all additional to the parking requirements at various times of the day. The extra strain on services to and from the site have probably already been taken into account by the builders, but time will tell. But certainly the extra strain on doctors' surgeries in the area will have a significant effect, as specified in the NHS Hampshire and Isle of Wight local planning engagement team's letter to the PCC planning department. The Portsmouth Society have also made a very strong complaint to the planning department regarding the architectural detailing that has been altered on the latest plans and probably do not conform to the East Southsea Conservation Area number 19 document, Guidelines for Conservation. This, of course, is well known to all the members of the committee, as it is a Portsmouth City Council document. Now, if we consider the North Wing, 26 more accommodation units over 6 floors. So now with the North Wing, there are 86 units in total that could potentially require a parking space. With the addition of the north wing to the north car park, the number of car parking spaces is reduced to 17. And at the front of the west wing, there are 3 spaces, hence 20 in total. Now, again, not every north wing apartment may have a car, but as I've specified before, some may have more than one. So let's assume that with 86 units, each unit has 1 car. Now, unless Sender Limited knows something about their prospective customers that we do not, this means that 20 spaces for car parking, 66 vehicles requiring on-road parking. I won't mention anymore the extra visitors or contractors' vehicles that may also require car parking. NHS have predicted 133 extra people requiring a doctor's surgery. This is just for the west and north wings. What about the east wing? I estimate 40 to 50 more. So nearly 190 to 200 in total, more strain on local services. Medical services to and from the buildings and car parking. The roads at the moment in the Alhambra, Mansion Road and Granada Road areas, plus those spreading into the Cranes Water area, are already chock-a-block most of the day. So, if I may, in the words of the pop band Kaiser Chiefs' first UK hit, I predict a riot.
Mr. Blackford, your 6 minutes is just finishing. Could you bring your comments to a close?
Yes, I will. So therefore, I would say that the lesser of 2 evils, I would like to propose that the west wing is adopted, but the north wing is not. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Mr. King.
Thank you very much, Chair. I hope there isn't a riot, but I'll carry on. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address members today and to present some of the planning merits of this scheme. I'm the planning consultant, as you know, for the development. I've been working with your officers to seek to deliver the scheme over the last 3 years, and I'll try and keep my speech short and not replicate what officers have already mentioned. As members of the committee will have heard in the officer's presentation, the site and this proposal has a significant planning history, which should form part of the overall planning considerations. And I believe that that planning history, along with the housing need, would mean that the principle of development should be considered as being entirely acceptable. Through working with officers during the lifetime of the application, we're now able to present a scheme that we believe demonstrates the culmination of these efforts and which we hope will lead to a consented and deliverable scheme. As set out by officers, the site has not operated directly as a hotel for some time, having been found unviable to do so. However, the applicant recognises that the site has heritage benefits, is visually prominent and an important building in the local area. The scheme before members proposes to retain the main hotel building, allowing it to be modernised and retained. There will be changes to the building as set out in the officer's report and the presentation, with the addition of upper floors and changes to the overall aesthetic, but we hope that it will be rejuvenated and continue the building's existence. There have been a number of design iterations as set out and changes. The rear block has previously been subject to a number of consents, most notably a scheme of similar form and scale, which we believe may be extant by implementation, which was consented in the sort of final phases of 2007. The scheme provides a good mixture of 1, 2 and 3 bed homes within the new and refurbished block in excess of adopted space standards, as well as landscaped areas and cycle and car parking. As set out in the officer's report, given the very complex history of the site, the scheme has actually already delivered its affordable housing benefit at the Casey's bar site in Common Street. While I note and it's regrettable that there are objections to the scheme, the applicant is only seeking to amend the previous consents and create a scheme that they can actually deliver. Moreover, this has also allowed the opportunity to improve the design as set out by officers. Through consultation with officers, we've also made further amendments during the course of the scheme. The scheme, we hope, provides good quality architecture, green space, a balance of mix of houses, and has already provided its affordable housing. As set out in the SMAT, the Environment Agency have now removed their objection to flooding and drainage, subject to conditions, which we fully endorse. The site has very limited ecology value. However, this landscaping on the scheme would improve this, which in turn would improve the biodiversity of the site. As part of the negotiations and during the consideration of the application, parking was actually reduced in order to provide more active frontage and more landscaping, and this has been done at the request of officers for the benefit of the wider scheme. It's also providing a policy-compliant amount of cycle parking spaces and is within a close proximity to local amenities and bus stops, although it's quite away from a train station. I would respectfully request that members consider the overall planning balances when in their deliberations of the scheme, and that the scheme has, to all intents and purposes, been designed and consented in various guises already. The scheme now provides something that is deliverable and can benefit the wider area. It provides a good mix of houses, reutilises an existing building, will provide 106 and SIL contributions, and we hope that you will agree provides significant benefits which would outweigh any harms. I would humbly request that members vote in line with the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, colleagues, questions. I've got a couple of questions that I'd just like to work through if it's possible. David, could you just walk us through the affordable housing stuff? Because this is, this looks not just at this site, but the east wing as well. And I just want to try to make sure that, because there's no offer here on top of what's already been provided.
No, Chair. So, yes, so it is not straightforward, is the short answer. But the headline you need to take away is that as we've delivered 20 units elsewhere, where we against where we are today, and bearing in mind how government policy has changed in the interim, we have secured a significantly greater amount of affordable housing than we would have done today. So that's the takeaway headline. In terms of getting into the nitty-gritty of explaining that gets very complicated. So I really apologise if I lose people on this. What makes a difference today, which was different to 2007, is that government policy has changed in relation to something called the vacant building credit. So what that does is gives anyone who is either demolishing or reusing a building a credit of that floor space that they subtract from the affordable housing contribution. So what that means in reality, let me take you through the current scheme. So the current scheme's got 4,600 square metres of floor space, and at the end of it there'll be 6,700 square metres floor space. So the existing building is 68% of the total. So we can then only claim affordable housing on the extra, so i.e. 32% of our normal contribution. So 32% of what we would have at normal 32% is 9.6%. So we've already lost 2/3 of the contribution that we would get. Making it even more complicated, originally the planning unit included the east wing, so the original hotel was the east and the west wing. Again, when that was extended and converted, that only added on 500 square metres to its 3,000 square metres. So we could only have claimed 15% of the affordable housing in relation to that scheme. So that would equate, so doing the maths, 9.6% of 57 units on this scheme, that's 5.4 units. 4.5% of the 29 units approved on the east wing, that's 1.3 units. So the total across the two schemes, looking at it today, would be 7 units. What we've actually secured is 20, which are built, occupied. So a principle is we can't double count, can't charge someone twice for the same planning mitigation, and we have secured significantly more affordable housing than we may have done had the things not gone through, is the short answer, Chair.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful. So government policy means that if you leave a building empty for a bit, you escape having to pay tax.
I don't know about that. What it is it's the existing floor space is credited against your affordable housing contribution. So within urban areas, the likelihood is in most cases you'll be dealing with existing floor space, and that will come off the affordable housing contribution. You're dealing with a greenfield site, you're building 100 houses, you have a 30%, you get 30% of the units. For an urban area like Portsmouth, the city authority, the vacant builder credit will impact often on what you can achieve as affordable housing as a result.
Okay, sounds like government lunacy to me, but I'm sure if we leave that with Shah and Mary, you'll go and get that sorted quickly. But if that's the law, that's the law. David, the next thing is, my understanding is that there is a planning permission granted in 2007 for the development here, including a new build where they're proposing a northern block. That planning permission is still extant and could be built at any time. Is that correct? Tell me if I'm wrong.
I'll just double check the report, but even if it isn't, Chair, on its merits, bearing in mind the location within the central area, bearing in mind the scale of properties, bearing in mind we don't have a 5-year housing land supply, we would be looking to make effective and efficient use of this site, and we have approved larger schemes for more units in the past. So I think we would see, even if there wasn't a history, we would still be saying to you that we consider this completely acceptable. It's not acceptable simply because of the planning history. It's acceptable on its merits today, Chair. But I'll double check that point.
I'd be very good. Sorry, two more things, David. There's a concern raised by local residents about lack of car parking. In the presentation, you said there was an offer from the developer to put more car parking in, but the view was taken on the Undercroft to say no and do something different. Knowing the feeling from residents about the desire for off-street car parking, why on earth was that suggestion made?
Well, for a number of reasons, Chair. First is that your highways officers don't object to the scheme. I'm conscious that when the planning permission was granted for the conversion of the east wing to 29 units, no car parking was provided at that site. So we are at a better ratio than we were on the adjacent site. That's a recent approval. That's been done under current under our current policies and guidance that we had an entirely car-free development on the east wing. So I think for a number of reasons there were benefits from reducing that car parking. So that was a very poor layout with the Undercroft parking. We allowed us to get a much better looking building as a result, and from the advice from our internal experts is that they don't object to that level of parking provision, notwithstanding the guidance in the SPD.
And if we wanted to put a condition on, if we were thinking of giving planning permission to ask for that car parking to go back in, could we do that?
No, I think would be the answer, Chair, because I think you'd then be making such substantial changes to the building that you're going well beyond, in effect, you're redesigning the scheme by condition, and you can't do that.
So if we're unhappy about the parking, we need to say we need to vote against.
We would need to have the harm, Chair, as always.
Yeah. Okay. And finally, as this is in a conservation area, they're proposing taking away the historic railings, which are a really important part of the visual aspect of this building. Can we put a condition on to say they need to be reused, retained, or if there's something new going in, something that replicates that?
So the report talks about their lack of structural capabilities. Reuse and retain, I think, will probably not be reasonable because...
But replicate we could?
Replicate, if you're unhappy, you could have a condition to seek approval of the design of their balustrades.
To replicate what's there?
Potentially. I would leave it open, Chair, for practical reasons, because they're still functioning as balconies. So we still want to be able to keep that open space for the occupiers. But if we can agree the details, we can ensure we try to achieve something in line with the existing appearance.
Okay. And agree means the committee would need to agree that?
We content to do that, Chair. I mean, it does delay the process to take discharge condition schemes back to committee, and we're happy to engage with the Chair and Vice Chair on these issues. It does delay if we have to take these matters back to committee.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of my questions. I'm sorry I hogged the time. Other questions? Councillor Atwell.
So did we get to what the parking expectation would be for this development?
David, do we have a number from what the policy would say for a development of 57 units? It's 1.5 per unit, I think, isn't it?
Parking provision, Chair.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's... now I've gone... I had that ready, but I've moved on from a different bit when you asked me about the planning history. So I'll go back to the... thank you. Yeah, so it's in the report, Chair. So the standard in the SPD, so it's 8.66. So it's 81 spaces plus 8 additional for visitors. We're at 20, including 2 disabled spaces.
Okay, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. Could you, Mr. Blackford mentioned about how he felt that residents would be in favour of the West Wing being adopted, but not the North Wing by the committee. Is that? Could you just confirm whether that's something that we're able to do or not?
So, Chair, it's a single scheme for the whole development, so the conversion and the new build. So, you would have to have a reason why the North Wing new build was unacceptable, and you'd have to refuse the whole scheme. You wouldn't be able to just take that out of the scheme.
And there's already a consent for a building of 6 stories on the site of that northern wing anyway. Okay, Councillor North.
Do we have any clarification for EV charging yet? As it doesn't state in there, they said it's going to be done before the first person moves in.
That's actually picked up by building regs, Chair. So my understanding is new build requires EV charging under the building regulations, so we don't need to double count it with a planning condition.
So I think that means the answer is yes, it will be. And thank you, the agent is nodding as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Atwell.
In respect of the affordable housing, great 20 units have been provided. I'm interested where they've been provided.
So they're provided next door to Lord's Court.
Nowhere near the seafront.
Nowhere near. But that was something was done in 2007, and it's been occupied by residents ever since.
But the point is, of course, there should be affordable housing on the seafront.
Yes, but there may have been we may have got more units, but in a different location. Okay. Any other questions? Mary, Councillor Valerie.
Do we have drainage for the area prepared? I didn't notice it in there. Good drainage around the building?
Chair, there's a condition to deal with that in particular. I shall find it. But yes, we would want the drainage details. Condition 8, and it's one that's updated from the Environment Agency's report. And clearly, in this location where we've got significant flood risk, we would want those details agreed by our own internal experts. Chair, I have the answer to your original question. So in 4.1, about the planning history, yes, are taking the view that the permissions are extant. So sorry, 4.2. Sorry, I should say. So we no. Basically our position is they were implemented, and therefore there's a fallback position.
Okay, so the principle of conversion at the building of a block at the north is already accepted and was granted planning permission 18 years ago. Okay, colleagues, any more questions? Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. Could I have a little bit more information about your consultations, especially with the Environmental Agency, saying that the FRA assessment wasn't up to scratch?
Yes, Chair. So clearly, bearing in mind its location, the flood risk was a significant issue, and we've been negotiating with the EA over the course of the scheme to make amendments to the scheme. So a number of things that we pointed out in the presentation follow from the EA's advice. So, for example, how the accommodations arranged in the historic building with the lower basement and the upper ground floor. Yeah, so it was very last minute, as we've only received it yesterday, but we are satisfied, and the EA is now satisfied, and they've withdrawn their holding objections. So we would not have grounds on flood risk to refuse in this instance, Chair.
Oh, thank you for the clarification.
So my understanding is that the area here is both below sea level of high water mark, but also the areas in the vicinity of the Great Morass. But with the new sea defences going in, this is a defendable space. Okay, any more questions, colleagues? No. Comments, proposals? So it seems to me that there is the idea of converting here and building the North Block is already established as a planning application. So if we don't agree with this, it'll just go back to that proposal. And so we're not dealing here with a clean slate. We're dealing here with something where there's already a discussion. I think the affordable housing has been dealt with. The government policy might be wrong, but that's how life is, and most government policy is probably wrong about most things. But that just happens to be how life is, and we have to work with that. I have to say, I know they're smallish things in comparison, but if the railings having something that is more in keeping with the historic nature would be good. It's a conservation area, and in conservation areas we're meant to make sure that any changes make it better, not worse. And I think removing it and replacing with something that's modern is not good. And then there's the lack of parking, which is significantly below, but there is a planning application that is extant. I am concerned that planning officers have been giving advice about lack of car parking being acceptable when that is not the view of I think a fair number of people on the committee, and definitely not the view of residents in the city. And I think that's something we may have to take up outside of this. So I am wandering between deferring to ask the applicant to come back and come back with proposals for the railings, which I would, if I put it on as a condition, I'd say it would have to come back to members, because the conservation officer was happy to get rid of something that's historic, and that I think is, again, means we need to be there, and whether it's possible to get additional car parking, or whether we put things in as conditions. I'm on the fence between deferral to allow some tweaking by the applicant, or putting in saying yes but with conditions. So I shall wait to be persuaded by members of the committee. Councillor Atwell.
I think there's also something about the ecology piece. You know, the development, it says here, doesn't it, the development does not meet requirements of local or national policy. So perhaps there is some work to go away and do on that, and bring back later.
I think one of the ways we could do in terms of the parking is to put an informative in to say to the Cabinet Member for Transport that we would hope that the new applicants would not be allowed residence car parking passes within that area, and therefore they would have to therefore not create an imposition on on existing residents. Okay, Councillor Shah.
No, actually, what I was saying is deferring would be a better option to come with, especially in regards to the parking and the other option you just mentioned.
Okay. Colleagues' thoughts? Councillor Vallely.
I actually think that we should put conditions in and let
Okay.
it get started, because it's going to take forever.
Okay. So, Councillor Vallely, you're proposing that we accept, but with a series of conditions around A, the railings coming back to members for approval of something that is in keeping with the historic building, and secondly, in terms of car parking, with a informative to ask the Cabinet Member for Transport to exclude residents here from being able to get residence car parking permits in that area. Is that correct? Okay. Councillor Jeffrey?
Can I second that?
You can second that. Okay. Is there any other proposals? Councillor Cordy, you're negotiating. So, okay. No. Okay, if that is the proposal, we have one proposal on the table that planning permission is granted, but with conditions over coming back to members on terms of historic railings and asking making sure that the Cabinet Member for Transport knows that residents moving in here should not be able to access the residence car parking zone. Okay, Councillor Ray.
Dent. Can we just make sure the officers are okay with us adding these conditions in before we vote?
Yeah, Chair, so details of the railings, that's fine, that's straightforward. Excluding residents from parking permits, if it's a discussion with the portfolio holder, I wouldn't see that as a planning condition. We could put it as an informative.
That's what I suggested.
Yeah, sorry, apologies.
Okay, can I see those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. Those abstaining, please show. Okay, so planning permission is granted on that. Okay, if we can move back now to 6 Shedwell Road.
Chair, can I propose we have a 10-minute comfort break?
Yes, to go and refill. Well, I have to say, unless they provide me with a bottle down here, I would find it remarkably helpful as well. So, 5 to 12, please. Colleagues, we are without Councillor Atwell and Councillor Shah. If people have got their numbers, could you text them to get them back here ASAP? Because we need to start. Mary, could you do Councillor Shah? Could you, Councillor Jeffrey, could you contact Councillor Atwell? He's in the... No, I know he never answers his phone. This one. Okay. Okay, we'll need to start with Councillor Atwell if he's not here. So let's do 16 Shadwell Road. Oh, nick of time, the late Councillor Atwell. Well, tough. Simon, is this you? David?
Oh, it's me this time, Chair. Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is a scheme for 16 Shadwell Road for its change of use from a C3 dwelling house to a 7-bed, 7-person HMO.
George, Darryl, if you want to have a chat, can you do it outside, please? Yep. Yep, so... okay,
so
I think we can start again.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll carry on. So you can see the property there, mid-terrace property on the north side of the road, and very typical of the area, as we'll see from the photo there. So bay-fronted mid-terrace. So in terms of the mix and balance communities, so you can see that we currently have, with this property, there will be 5 HMOs out of 72 units, or 6.94%, so we are well below the 10% in this instance, and so that complies with your policy. In terms of the alterations to the property, so the property will be extended by a roof dormer at the back, and then this rear extension as well, which replaces a fairly rough and ready conservatory that's there at the moment, and both of those will be permitted development and don't need planning permission. So the existing layout, we've got a slightly odd layout. You can see with the bed on the left-hand side, the bedroom, which in fact faces into the conservatory at the back, so it doesn't have actually have a full outlook onto the rear. And then upstairs we have sort of 3, arguably 4 bedrooms with the what's shown as a dressing room in the rear wing, accessed only through that bedroom. So in terms of the layout of the proposed HMO, that is fairly typical in the layouts that we see. So we've got 2 bedrooms on the ground floor, both en suite. There's an additional WC on the ground floor as well. You've got communal kitchen, a diner, which uses that space, which only had an outlook onto the conservatory before. And then your bed 2 now has a much better aspect, looking out down the light well. Up on first floor, we've got 3 ensuite rooms, and again, all meeting the size standard, and some quite sizable rooms, particularly the one highlighted there. And then in the loft, again, we achieve 2 bedrooms with en-suites. So just looking in terms of the layout, you see there's a sizable, perfectly adequate rear garden for space for occupiers, also can provide a bike store, shows where the small rear extension will be added to the rear wing, and then you've got room for bins in the front forecourt, and then just on the right you've got the cross section through, which shows you how you'll achieve an adequate head height. Just some views of the property. You can see, as you'll see from the photos, in need of renovation, and particularly the conservatory is a sort of poor aspect on the back of the property. Just moving on to the other photos. you'll see the existing layout and of the, I believe we're just about in the process of the property being renovated, and then just final views just to show the existing light and outlook from the rear at first floor. So just, Chair, there's no update from the SMAT to draw your attention to for this property. And as set out in the report, we recommend the application for approval to you.
Thanks very much indeed. Okay, we have, and Mr. Legg is not able to be here. Oh, hello. So through this meeting, we've been doing objectors first and then applicants, and I think we should stick with that. Oh yeah, fine. But I think we should first go to Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chair. Like all residents of Shadwell Road, we are disappointed that another HMO application has come forward, be it change from a C3, C4 to sous-genre or a new application. This, in fact, is the 12th time in just a few years that Shadwell Road has come to Planning Committee. As it stands, Shadwell Road has 8 private HMOs, 13, 15, 29, 43, 46, 51. They are all sous-genre, and if given permission today, 16 will also turn into a sous-genre. Of course, this is not including the other HMOs in the area that are not privately owned. Excuse me. Now, I'm glad 207 to 217 Copner had such interest in parking disparity with the apartments, and actually all the applications so far has had quite an emphasis on parking, and I actually welcome it. Every planning committee, especially concerning C3 to C4, we are told, and I quote, the proposal would increase the occupancy of the existing HMO by 2 occupants, or in this case 3 to 4. While this would have a proportionate increase in activity within and coming and going from the property, this small increase in the number of residents is not considered likely to have a demonstrable adverse effect on residential amenity for neighbours of the surrounding area. Further to this, there have been no objections raised by the Highways Department. Now, there are 2 parts to this observation. Firstly, with all the HMOs in Shadwell being sous-genre and 2 of them actually being 8-bedroom, this is 58 adults or professionals in 8 houses. Would this not have a demonstrable adverse effect on parking in the area? Is this not also overcrowding concern? Impact on local services? Only a few occupants extra, but they soon add up, Chair. Then there is further to this, there have been no objections raised by the Highways Department. However, on 5.4, the Highways have noted about the parking of this application. Given the provision of bedrooms would increase, there is potential for increased assistances of vehicles driving around for spaces. However, this would be an amenity used for the Planning Committee, consideration. This is not the first application where we've read this advice from the Highways Department, and it's never even been considered, which I hope today would be a change, considering every single application has emphasis on parking. I think it's also worth noting that crime has increased from a number of HMOs in the area, all of which have been reported to the police. Why does the Planning Department not take note of increased crime in the area? For the Planning Committee to consider if it is good practice to keep allowing planning permission to further HMOs in this area. We hope the committee will refuse planning permission today due to overdevelopment, overcrowdedness, and the adverse effect and impact on parking on Shadwell Road and the surrounding areas. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Carrie Ann Wells.
Thank you. As Gary stated, this is currently a C3 dwelling, or it's currently empty, a C3 dwelling in the last ownership, but I feel it's really important to stress that it's got planning permission for C3, C4, so this property is an existing C4 property that has the dual functionality to be able to change between C3, C4, which is still in place, and therefore in reality today you're only considering 1 additional person. All 7 bedrooms are large and range from 11.81 to 18.11 and all benefit from their own ensuite. The required communal area when all bedrooms exceed 10 square metres is 22.5 and this provides 29.45 of fully usable communal area, which exceeds that requirement. There is an additional WC at ground floor level for the comfort of the residents, and in addition to this there is a separate small utility room on the first floor which will house the hot water tank and laundry facilities. This property is extremely spacious and will provide an excellent standard of living for all 7 residents. I wanted to point out again that HMO tenants typically have a low rate of car ownership, and that in most of our 7-bed conversions, the maximum car ownership is 3 cars. So I don't think that car ownership is too much of a consideration as opposed to the flat schemes that we've been discussing this morning. In regards to the extension, there was a comment from Councillor Simpson on the objections on the mentioned extension. I just want to stress that the proposed extension is actually a smaller footprint from the existing conservatory, and it will be a huge improvement on the existing arrangement, and that will obviously bring it in away from the boundary and away from the neighbour. In terms of the existing 4-bed HMO that's there, which our client could go back and quite easily house 6 people in there with no changes, it's a really poorly designed 4-bed property, no window to bed 2, and not an arrangement or a HMO that certainly I would want to live in. So I just want to stress that the works have been done to be taking it fully back to brick and improve the standards for the tenants that are going to be in that property. Unusually today, I've got the owner who wants to say a few words because he's quite passionate about doing well for his tenants. So I'll pass over to you. But if you can just keep in mind, say that this proposal fully complies with PCS 17, PCS 20 and PCS 23 of the local plan, and is fully compliant with the Housing Multiple Occupational Supplementary Planning document, and that I ask that you approve today in line with officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Legg, welcome. I'm sorry you've not been well.
That's all right. Thank you for accepting me today. So thanks for your time today. Firstly, I'd like to say to support the application and make you aware the current look of the property will be made much better, along with internal rooms finished to a very high standard. We will be renewing all windows throughout the property with a new front door to align with building regs. That being said, the EPC of the property will be greatly improved with a Grade A fire alarm installed. The building works will be carried out by my building company, ensuring disruption is kept minimal, taking into consideration the neighbours and working with them where possible. The property will be professionally managed through a letting agent to ensure we're compliant, and any issues, if they arise, will be dealt with quickly and professionally. I'm keen to provide a great home for 7 tenants whilst being a responsible landlord, which is why I'm here today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. Under a minute, you probably get points for that. Okay, colleagues, questions from members of the committee? The question I have, David, is the work that's being done in terms of redevelopment, does that need planning permission, or can that be done by permitted development?
Yes, so the roof dormer and the rear extension we have checked, and they do fall within the scope of permitted development. And just to be clear, the application is solely for the change of use of the property.
So the suggestion that we could turn it down for overdevelopment would seem, if there's no permission being sought for development, turning it down for overdevelopment would seem to be difficult for us to justify.
Yes. So the applicant has a fallback position to construct those, whether it stays as a C4 dwelling house or goes back to a C3 dwelling house.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. In terms of the parking provision that we would expect for this planning application, I'm sorry, David, you will know, is it an extra 0.5 of a space?
No, not in this instance, Chair. So just looking at the report, so the existing layout shows 4 bedrooms, so it's 4-bedroom property, so it's 8.22 onwards. So the parking standard for a 4-bed dwelling is exactly the same as a HMO, 2 off-road spaces, so there's no increase in demand under our guidance, Chair.
So justifying a refusal based on no increase in car parking requirements would be difficult to justify?
Yes, that would be my advice, yeah.
Okay. Questions, colleagues? Any questions? No. Comments and proposals? I'm sorry, I can't see a way of turning this down which would have any hope of being going through an inspector, because if the works being done are being done under permitted development, therefore they don't fall planning permission, and the guidance says there's no need for additional car parking than there is now, so therefore that doesn't, it would mean we just don't have, in my view, we wouldn't have a leg to stand on. So I'm sorry, I'm going to propose officer recommendation on this. Are there any, Councillor Atwell, are there any other proposals? Okay, can I see those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. Those abstaining, please show. Thank you. Planning permission is granted. Okay, 133 Laburnum Grove. Russell, thank you for coming. We are on, let's just go to page 67.
You ready, Chair?
Okay, folks, let's settle down. David.
Excuse me, I'm not ready now. Yeah, so thank you. This is an application for the change of use from 6-person, 6-bed HMO to a 7-person, 7-bed HMO at 133 Laburnum Grove. You can see the property there. It's actually a semi-detached property on the north side of Laburnum Grove, and you can see there its layout in the street scene. There's a property there, and typical of this particular section of Laburnum Grove, well, there's a series of semi-detached properties. So in terms of your mix and balance communities, so the property is already a HMO, and so does not increase the proportion of HMOs in the 50-metre radius search area as a result of this scheme. So we are 6 in 78 properties, so 7.7%. So we're nonetheless below the 10% anyway, notwithstanding that this doesn't increase the proportion of HMOs. So here's the existing property, as you can see there. And in terms of its floor plan and layout, again, very much typical of there's a slightly, you've got additional, in terms of the layout at the moment, you've got additional bedrooms at the first floor. So you've actually got 4 beds there. And just looking at the first floor, just want to highlight that there's this middle bedroom in the rear wing, which its only outlook is to the side. So it's basically looking straight down into the adjacent property. So there will be some, as you'll see from the proposed plans, will be some benefits from the scheme in that regard. Slightly different with this, as it's not a mid-terrace property, there's actually the opportunity to do a hip to gable extension, which you see top left. That's also still permitted development under the Town and Country Planning Act, and added to that will be a rear dormer, but in this case there's no rear extension to the property, that stays as it is. So what that does mean is, in terms of your layout, again, we get something that we see quite typically with these proposals, so 2 ensuite bedrooms at the ground floor, then the communal living dining space to the rear. Moving upstairs, again, we've got 3 ensuite rooms, but what the scheme does take the opportunity to do is take out that side-facing bedroom there. So that space is effectively incorporated into an ensuite and then a utility area for the residents, which is separate from the kitchen dining. So the kitchen diner has more space for the occupiers. And then going up into the roof again, 2 more ensuite rooms shown. Just some views of the existing property, which will be changed. Chair, in terms of the scheme, our view is it's very straightforward in terms of complying with your policies in terms of HMO, and that's actually an improvement in terms of the accommodation and potentially for neighbours. The principal issue just wanted to address today is in relation to the question of whether the scheme actually requires planning permission or not. Notwithstanding that the applicant has applied for planning permission, you'll see from our report that our recommendation is that unconditional consent is granted, because our understanding is very clear that the applicant has a fallback to do the works without needing planning permission. You'll see from the SMAT, at the end of last week and after the report was written, that we received an appeal decision in relation to a site at 73 Margate Road, and that specifically considered the issue of whether going from a 6-person HMO to a 7-person HMO represents a material change of use. So the appeal was allowed, and the inspector stated, as we've highlighted in the SMAT, development requiring planning permission would only occur if addition of a 7th resident would result in a material change of use of the building. For a change of use to be material, there must, as a matter of fact and degree, be some significant difference in the character of activities from what happened before. And case law confirms that this requires a proposed use to be compared with the current use as it actually is, i.e. so there's 6 people in there, or has been, and not hypothetically what it might be. So the inspector in that appeal decision considered the factors that were put forward as our reasons for refusal as a material change of use, and these are often used by the committee in relation to parking demand, domestic waste production, noise and antisocial behaviour, purportedly stemming from the additional resident going from 6 to 7. However, the inspector noted that our standards for both parking and waste are identical between a 6-person HMO and a 7-person HMO, indicating that significant difference should not normally be expected. Again, there was no evidence that a 7-person HMO or a 6-person HMO has any noticeable difference in their noise or antisocial behaviour, and therefore there was no evidence that the one additional resident makes a significant difference, and this is the test about whether it's a material change of use. Our own evidence is that the use of beds and communal areas is unlikely to make a significant change in the effect on neighbours, and the council confirmed it had no evidence linking higher occupation levels within HMOs to increased antisocial behaviour. Consequently, the appeal was allowed. In addition, a full award with costs was made against the council because the decision of the committee contradicted the officer report, but no evidence or analysis was provided to justify the assessment made by the committee. And to quote the inspector, the council has failed to present evidence or objective analysis to substantiate a material change of use in any factor on which its stated decision rests. That's sufficient to confirm that it acted unreasonably, and so force the applicant to pursue the appeal and incur all the costs that followed. So our advice is very clear, Chair, that it's not a material change of use in this instance for a property to go from 6 to 7 people. There has to be a significant material change, and of the factors that are regularly quoted by the committee, the inspector did not find that these represented reasons to allege a material change of use. So we do, in the strongest possible terms, advise that the application should be approved unconditionally as set out in the report. Thank you.
Hold on, Councillor Dent. I will come to questions in a minute.
Not a question, Chair. I may have conflict of interest in this one. I've been dealing with residents on this, and I've only just checked my notes, and this is one of the ones I've been dealing with residents. So it's entirely up to you, but I think I should excuse myself.
It's entirely up to you. That unfortunately, Juliet's had to go for a family issue, and therefore is not here to present legal advice. It is entirely your decision, but my advice would be that if you feel as if members of the public would feel that you hadn't entered the room with an open mind about whether we should get planning permission to this or not, you are best to absent yourself until this application is completed.
I think I'll agree with that. I will excuse myself.
No, absolutely. And we will call you back. Okay. So we now go to deputations. Carrie-Anne Wells.
Thank you. As David has already said, this is a change of use from an existing 6-bed C4 HMO to a 7-bed HMO. All 7 bedrooms are large and they range from 11.95 to 16.46 and all have benefit of their own ensuite. The required communal area would be 22.5 and this property provides 30.5 fully usable communal area wider than some that you generally see. This exceeds that requirement. There is also an additional WC at ground floor level for the comfort of the residents, and in addition there is a separate 5.5 square metre laundry room on the first floor, again increasing the amenity on the overlooking on the neighbour and taking away that side window for the existing bedroom. This property is extremely spacious and will provide an excellent standard of living for all seven residents. I'm not going to repeat David too much, but there has been a further recent appeal decision allowed, considering the increase of one person to an existing HMO is not a material change. The inspector concluded, and this isn't for the first time, there are many instances now and all over the UK, that for a change of use to a material, there must, as a matter of fact and degree, be a significant difference in the character of activities. The application before you is also due consideration of that very question today, though I am here with a full planning application, as I am aware as members you do not agree with the inspectorate view, which is why I'm asking you all today for consideration as a full application and consider the spacious, well-designed HMO before you on its many merits. The proposal is fully compliant with PCS 17, PCS 20 and PCS 23 of the local plan and also complies with the Housing in Multiple Occupations Supplementary Document 2019. I ask that you please consider the application before you and approve in line with officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Questions, colleagues? Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, I wonder if you could just, I wasn't sort of expecting to hear necessarily what you said, David, about the Margate Road appeal, but isn't that in an area that's greater than 10% SPD?
So, Chair, that's not the test. What we're considering is whether actually there's a material change of use taking place that actually needs planning permission. So notwithstanding that the applicants actually applied for planning permission, all the evidence points to the fact that actually they have a fallback position to do it, all of the works, both the use and the physical alterations without needing planning permission. The reason for going into some detail on that issue, it's always set out in the reports, and we have lost costs and lost appeals on a number of occasions, is to just emphasise the fact that yet again we have an appeal decision from the higher authority in the process who is concluding each time that the member's decision is misplaced.
Okay. Any other questions? So we have taken a consistent view as a committee that going from 6 to 7 or 6 to 8 does need planning permission. But I'm conscious of what David has said. But I'm also conscious that this is the last meeting of the current committee, and on the next meeting will be with a different chair and potentially a different committee. And I think it would be sensible for us to have an informal meeting of the committee, both old and new, to talk this through in terms of where, with the planning officers, in terms of whether we as members take a different view for the future or not. I think trying to set policy now for a new committee, which is going to take place, will be elected in 2 weeks' time, I feel is probably not the right time to do this. I have asked for a piece of work to be done to look at all the ones where we've refused planning permission because they've gone up, and what then happens in terms of having a whether that's stuck to, whether there's an appeal, whether there's an appeal and costs, etc. Unfortunately, the advice I've had is that the planning officers are too busy to be able to do that piece of work, to be able to inform members, and therefore that piece of work hasn't happened to inform us, which I think is disappointing. But I think the appeal decision is something we're going to have to think about, but I think it's probably best done not on a single planning application where there are different things going on, but whether we sit down together at an informal meeting and see if we can see where we feel we want to go. Carrie Ann, I'm sorry, we're not going to invite you. That would be very helpful. Unfortunately, our planning officers have been unable to provide that. So my suggestion today, and I'm sorry because I'm leaping into comments, is that this planning application is for an area which is below the 10% and where none of the rooms are too small by below. Therefore, the reason that I wouldn't have a reason to turn it down, but I still think to keep consistency, I will propose that I think it does need planning permission, but I will then be proposing that we then give planning permission with the usual conditions, so that we keep consistency through the year. But I would then suggest that we try to get together the existing members of this committee and the new ones with the new chair to see if we can work this through, to see whether we change our view as a committee or not, as a pragmatic suggestion. I don't know if that meets with people's approval or not, but that would be what I would suggest I am going to propose. There was silence. Mary.
I think there's no harm in us getting together to have a meeting about it, but we might not all agree. I'll just warn you now.
No. I think that's entirely probable, but I think it's worth working it through. Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think that's a really sensible idea.
Okay. So the first thing is I am going to propose, as we've done in the past, that I think this clearly does need planning permission, because we've got the evidence that says HMOs produce more rubbish, more antisocial behaviour and more pressure on parking in an area where this is already problematic. Can I see somebody to second that proposal that it does need planning permission? Councillor Atwell. Can I see colleagues, can we vote on that, decide if that's going to be those in favour?
Chair, that's directly contrary to the advice that I've just given you, that it's entirely without merit. I can't envisage a scenario where a responsible public body wants to consistently make the wrong decision.
Okay, we note your comment, David. Can I see those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. Okay, that's unanimous. Can I then next propose that we grant planning permission with the usual conditions in terms of bird tax, time that it has to be go in, and I'm sure David and Simon, you've got the usual conditions to hand.
Yes, so Chair, so it would be commencement within 3 years, plans condition, provision of the cycle store and the water efficiency, and also the condition to carry out the PD works prior to occupation.
Okay.
And the legal agreement for the habitats mitigation. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Valady. Are there any other proposals? Can I see those in favour of that, please show. Those against, please show. Those abstaining, please show. Okay, planning permission is granted. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to Collington Crescent. Councillor Dent, your timing is impeccable. We were only voting about whether we should exclude you or not. No. Okay. Simon, I think this is you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a planning application at 38 Collington Crescent in Paulsgrove Ward. It's a change of use from a dwelling house to an 11-bed, 12-person house of multiple occupation with various extensions that I shall take you through shortly. So the application site is just a couple hundred metres north of Alloway Avenue and the little local parade there. On the corner here, Collington Crescent. To the east is Hempstead Green Park. A little bungalow, number 40, next to it. Some bungalows to the southeast. And obviously the land rises to the north up the hill. And we've got 2 properties, 3 and 4, Cleve Close on higher land to the north. This is the street view of the property. It was overgrown last time you saw this, which was last July. I'll take you through that in a minute. A lot of the trees and dense vegetation, etc., has now been cleared to reveal the house. It was quite difficult to see before, even in the winter. So a 2-storey house sitting up on slightly higher land, hipped roof, and extensive side garages. This is the rear of the property. So this is looking west. There's the back of the garage, the back of the house. Looking west, there's the bungalow number 40, and the houses going up the hill. These are the 2 properties due north, 4 and 3 Cleve Close, these 2. And there's looking back at the corner of the property with the park beyond to the left. Dealing with the HMO data count, just quickly first, this is the only HMO in the area, having granted planning consent for a very similar proposal last year. So this proposal for minor amendments that I'll talk you through in a moment doesn't change the local balance, which would remain at 5.55%. So it would maintain a mixed and balanced community and comply with policy. So if you cast your mind back to what the house looks like, there it is. It's a rectangular form. It looks a bit bigger on plan because of the quite large extensions at single story. So there's the rear conservatory and some garaging type outbuildings on the left hand side, the west there, and rectilinear form there. The proposal is extensive ground floor extensions. You can make out, I'm just outlining the original rectilinear footprint of the retained building, albeit significantly remodelled, and with the new materials on the outside, mostly new materials, it would look like a new dwelling, significantly extended, but there is a retention nevertheless, and extension. The large ground floor extension was a prior approval consent that the applicant achieved separately, so that's not formally part of this application. And then there is a 2-storey side extension, slightly different in footprint. The one difference from the previous scheme. So last year, an application was approved for a 10-bedroomed, 11-person HMO. This now proposes 11 bedrooms and 12 people. So 1 extra bedroom, which would accommodate 2 people. In fact, any of the rooms could accommodate 2 people because they're all of that size. The applicant has chosen to ask for just one of them to be double occupancy. We put a condition onto that effect to make sure it's just the one of them. So what is determined, if it's approved, is what you have been expecting, i.e. 12 people with 1 bedroom double occupancy. The only difference from the previous application is this rear element here, the extra bedroom. That was not previously there last summer when you last saw it. Just briefly on the front, there's some space for landscaping, which we discussed with the applicant to bring back some landscaping there after the loss of the previous vegetation. A couple of parking spaces on the front there, relocated bike store and some back gardens. Just taking you through the accommodation on the ground floor, fairly spacious hallway, good sized communal space, and then bedrooms each with ensuite. On the first floor, that's the 2-storey extension to the side. You'll see the elevations in a moment. 3 more bedrooms, en suites. There's a couple of spare storerooms at the back. And then into the roof, I'll show you in a moment, proposed roof extension to accommodate 2 more bedrooms, taking you up to the 11. And if you note here, the rear rooms in the roof are en suites. So this looks the same as the last consent from the street view. So the application would propose the roof changing from the hipped there to a pitched roof, gable ends, but it's the same pitch as the existing. 2D just looks more solid. And this is the left-hand side two-storey extension that was also approved last summer next to the bungalow at number 40. So here are the existing elevations. You've seen the front elevation there. The west elevation shows the garages there on the left-hand side, and then conservatively just popped behind it. You've seen the front elevation. Here's the rear of the two-storey elevation, the same as approved last year. The rear dormers have just added in the applicant realised they hadn't accounted for headspace in that particular space, so there's just a slight connection between the two approved dormers in the back there. And this is the extra 2.85 metres depth of space to provide the extra bedroom. So that is the one difference from the scheme you saw last year. There we are. So that's last summer's consented scheme. They've decided to propose to remove the cycle parking, put it back further into the site, and have that extra bedroom there. That is last summer's rear elevation, and as I mentioned before, just a slight recessed link there for headroom reasons. Councillor North very sensibly asked in yesterday's member briefing about the original refusal in the 2023 application. With apologies, we didn't set out the reasons in the report. He noted that had 12 persons, 12 bedrooms. How is that different to what they're now currently proposing? That previous scheme, here it is, was refused under delegated powers for two principal reasons. There were two lesser reasons, but the two principal reasons was it was overscaled. So the roof was going on with this mansard type effect with full height glazing and so on. And you can see the depth of that. It was not only taller to the street scene, it was also all this extra first floor and roof height at the rear. So very simply, that was refused, not on the grounds of the numbers of people occupying it, but on the scale and effect and design of the proposals, which officers felt was unacceptable for the locality. And then extra windows at height, bedroom windows, were going to overlook to the north, notwithstanding the property to the north and higher ground. But that was the concern there, and that was the second principal reason, loss of privacy over dominating effect. So all of that has been removed and effectively relocated onto the site. It was discussed with officers the acceptability of achieving the two-storey wing instead. So removed all the development on the top all the way across to the back and put it here, or some of it back here, which hopefully you'll agree is a reasonable street scene presented. We've just had a SMAT update, just some minor corrections, just very minor corrections to the elevations in terms of eaves and so on. Those are in the plans in front of you that you've seen. And the application came to committee because of a number of objections, but officers feel the application is acceptable and very little change from the last approval, so we were able to recommend it to you again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We have two people going to do deputations. First of all, Councillor Madgwick, welcome.
Welcome, Chair. Well, welcome, Chair. It makes no sense, does it? I'll say good morning, but it's the afternoon now, isn't it? Just about waking up. Yeah, so firstly, you have to just bear with me because I'm going to do like a full circle, but I just maybe it's pertinent just to note mine and Councillor Simpson's frustrations today, Chair, just for a little bit of context. I think all members here will remember the December full council meeting where we put a motion forward to consider these exempt HMOs that we discussed earlier within your planning committee. And you'll remember, Chair, that the Cabinet member Darren Sanders read out a speech from Ian Maguire where he stated that the request is somewhat redundant because the certain buildings that would otherwise be considered HMOs under the Housing Act may not matter if the dwelling falls under exceptions of the Schedule 14 of the Housing Act and it is an HMO. As a matter of fact, and agree the LPA will count it when assessing whether a change of use to the proximity would imbalance the community. He went on to say the key request is motion that the current exempt HMOs, which we're talking about in relation to the properties that fall under other acts, if they are considered alongside licensed HMOs as a material change of plan applications, is therefore uncontroversial that this consideration already occurs. And you'll probably remember yourself, Chair, you even stood up and said that you've been informed by the head of planning that the exempt HMOs under this Housing Act are already counted in the count that comes to the planning committee. And we've had an example today where that hasn't happened in whatever road it was, Chichester. And you won't mind me saying, because it was already brought up in a past planning meeting, that there actually was one in Shadwell which wasn't mentioned today and wasn't considered as part of your paperwork. So
Could we get back to this?
I think because obviously Russell was very animated and we've been chatting, I think it's pertinent to note that that's the reason why. And yourself, Councillor Pitt as the leader, and Councillor Sanders and Councillor Hunt had a right go at Russell and said that he's putting people at danger, and officers should never ever reveal under any circumstances these HMOs. And today we've had an example where an officer has disclosed where one of these HMOs are, what it's being used for, and has put those residents at risk, in your own words. Moving on to this HMO, Chair, as you know, our group are voted on being against HMOs. You know, we don't believe in the destruction of family homes for the gain of landlords. And I don't think I've ever come to a planning committee where I've spoke positively about an HMO in my life. However, hold on to your chairs, people, because we're about to spice it up. This, in my opinion, should be the framework of how a good HMO should be submitted. I know, Carrie-Anne, I know. She's even shocked at what I've just said. I mean, the space requirements are brilliant. As you'll see in the report, the minimum size should be a 6.5 square metres, and this developer has put in sizes of 14 square metres. The communal area is 16 square metres over space. There's parking. This is a really good example of an HMO, if there is one. I also want to really commend as well the developer, because up to about 1.5 years, 2 years ago now, I think he approached me directly. I had never met him or spoke to him before, and he approached me directly and said, this is what I'm planning to do, before the application ever went in. This is what's your thoughts, which was really good. He put posts on the public Facebook pages, like the Paulsgrove and Wimmering pages and Paulsgrove Information, and invited comments and considerations from residents, and had a very healthy and engaging debate openly with these residents. And it's really good. And when I first went round there a year ago, we had a lot of objection to it. There was a lot of people that were unhappy, a lot of people that were concerned, a lot of people that were worried. And I went round this weekend on Sunday and did some door knocking around every single house that was in that image there. And it completely changed. You know, there was still some people concerned, there was still some people against it, but overwhelmingly, these people's opinions have changed. They like the way the developer has done things. They find it respectful. They have appreciated the working hours. So I just think that, you know, today I wanted to come here and speak positively about an HMO for once. Whether that means if I had a vote, I'd vote for it or not, because at the end of the day, it still does destroy a family home, I don't know. But what I'm saying is that as a footprint, as an example of an HMO, this is a real positive example. The landlord's been really considerate, not only to residents, but to councillors. And also we've had reassurance, which is really nice, from the developers, that it'll be used for professional people as well, which is great, especially when we've got a hospital so close by where we're in desperate need for accommodation for doctors and nurses locally, and those that travel from abroad to work in our hospitals, and that's really positive as well. So yeah, I just wanted to come here today and speak relatively positively about an HMO, and we'll see how it goes, but I'd be content if it was approved.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Darren. Also, we probably better be formal. Mr. Brewer. I'm blushing.
I don't really know what to say. I'm shocked. I'm actually lost for words, actually. That's a first for me. I just wanted to say, actually, I didn't know what George was going to say, actually, Councillor Madrick. But actually, we've had a real positive response from the residents. And it worries me with social media that when these applications go live and residents jump on social media and say that they don't want a certain type of person living in a property, that we all get tarnished with the same brush. And I appreciate that there are some HMOs, as we've heard today, that are not meant to be known of because of vulnerable people living in them, and Obviously, we need to house those vulnerable people, but that's not what we do with our business. We house young professionals coming to Portsmouth, and I can assure you now that our phone doesn't stop ringing because we created a super hospital in this city because this hospital needed a super hospital, and we've given planning for a £60 million A&E department because we need a new A&E department, and we can't keep increasing the size of the hospital without staff coming to this hospital, and without those staff living somewhere, we don't have a super hospital. So I'm not saying that's everybody that lives in our ProPod house, it works at the hospital, but where the reason we bought this property was because we knew the hospital needed accommodation. And maybe some people don't realise that actually the residents at the hospital, the staff, only get 90 days to stay in temporary accommodation before they have to find new accommodation. So the turnaround is huge. That's the reason we decided to add the 11th bedroom. When we started the project, we actually didn't realise how big the land was and the amount of space that we have with it. And we think it's a great use of a property. And I hope that the committee agrees. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, questions? Councillor North.
I've only got one. It's just clarification that the extension that is being proposed on today's plan is nothing to do with the original one that was refused in 2023.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Comments, proposals? I'm happy to propose officer recommendation for planning permission to be granted. Seconded by Councillor Vallely. Are there any other proposals? Councillor Shah, are you proposing? I think no. Good. No. You have to be careful how we put our hands at these points. Yes. No. Scratching heads. You might have bid $1 million for a picture. If that's the only proposal, can I see those in favour of granting planning permission? Please show. Those against, please show. Those abstaining, please show. Okay, planning permission is granted. Okay, on to number 3 Longshore Way. Which is page 91 on our reports.
Thank you, Chairman. Application at 3 Longshore Way in Milton Ward. It's for the construction of a 2-storey side extension, front, rear and single-storey side extensions and a terrace at first floor level. I'll take you through those in a moment. We're right at the eastern end of Milton Ward, we included this map just to show you right up on the last stretch of Longshore Way before the land runs out and you fall into the harbour. It's Longshore Way and property here. It backs on to the sailing club and the locks here and looks west over some open land and some flats just beyond. Variety of properties in the area, different scale. We've got 3 or 4 3-storey blocks just dotted around here, and different, some are sort of dormer type bungalows, 2-storey, brick, render, cladding, cement, tile hanging, etc. This is the application property in the middle. There are important relationships to both properties to either side. That's the application there. So it's a 2-storey rectilinear house, a bit like the previous application. The property, the main body of the original house will be substantially retained, although it will look completely different due to complete remodelling, extension and new materials. Again, like the last one, in floor plan it looks a bit bigger because you can see the wraparound extensions on the floor plan like that. The proposals, you can see significant 2-storey side extension there and wraparound proposals. Put this one on first. The application has come to the planning committee because of an objection from the Milton Neighbourhood Forum, Because the Milton local plan is the adopted plan for the area, the forum is a statutory consultee, and so when they object to an application, it has to come to committee if officers wish to approve the application. So the forum, as set out, has, although they consider the visual appearance of the property is improved, they feel there's a breach of policy TSP2, which refers to the efficiency of transportation and sustainable transportation measures as set out in the report for you. They've pointed out that we should be having more sustainable transportation and movement, and the number 13 bus timetable has been improved. What they noticed was the application doesn't include, but is shown on the plans, different access arrangements at the front. So I'll just flip you back. At the moment, there's just a single width access point onto the forecourt and the garage, which you can see there. The proposal was to widen it quite significantly, and they indicated 3 parking spaces. That's now been amended down to 2. Whatever it is permitted development. This is a non-classified road, an unclassified road, so you can insert an access or widen it with the appropriate permeable paving, which is shown, which is why the access element is just shown on the plans. It's not a part of the planning application. So I'm afraid the objection was against permitted development, so can't take any status in terms of the determination of the application. There's the 2-storey property you can see, and the floor plans. That's the ground floor plan, the original with the wraparound garage and rear conservatory and so on, 2-storey upstairs. So the central element will be just about enough retain for us to constitute a household extension rather than new dwelling, and then these are large-scale wraparound ground floor extensions and 2-storey to the side. At first floor, you've got some covered terraces there, balconies effectively, coming out from the bedrooms, not surprisingly to look over the harbour. Each one has a side wall to prevent overlooking directly into the neighbour's garden. You'd have diagonal overlooking as you would from any other window, but you can't lean over and look straight down into your neighbour's patio and that sort of thing. Same on the northern side. Elevations, mixture of predominantly render, some cedar mock cladding, slate tiles, a bit of stonework there, indication of the sorts of materials. As I said, it will look completely different to the existing. More cladding to the rear. There's the 2 balconies, but with the solid screens to prevent overlooking. Sorry. Yes, I'll stop jiggling the cursor. Sorry, Councillor. That is the south elevation. You can see a store on both at ground floor level there, and the same on the northern elevation. Yeah, there's some 3D images to help illustrate. That's the front, and this is the rear. No objections from the neighbours. Nevertheless, you will have seen the officer has gone through very carefully, because they are quite extensive expansions of the house proposed, how they would affect the neighbours. Number 2 to the south, the only window affected is first floor bay window that happens to have a side bit there. That may lose some light from the 2-storey extension next to it, but of course it has its principal outlook and light unaffected over the harbour, so we have no concern there, no objection from the neighbour. Number 4 to the north has these side windows, porch, the stairs, landing, and then high-level conservatory windows that also have windows east to the rear. So although there will be some effect on these windows, they're either non-inhabitable or have further, more principal windows. That's their own terrace there. So again, officers felt there was no undue effect on either neighbour, and neither of them objected. I think that is all I need to say, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any deputations on this. Members, questions? Any questions? Councillor Jeffrey?
Yeah, could you just confirm, you said the Milton Forum put an objection in, but could you just clarify or repeat probably what you just said about it didn't have an impact, I think you said?
Because they're objecting to something that is permitted development, it's not a part of the application, so the objection doesn't really hold any value.
Comments and proposals? I'm happy to propose the officer recommendation. Councillor Jeffrey, are you happy to second that? Any other proposals? No. Can I see those in favour of granting planning permission? Okay, thank you. And that's unanimous. Oh, no, Councillor North. Yes, you. So that was unanimous. So therefore, by nature, nobody else can vote against it. Then, colleagues, this is my last meeting as chair. So can I minute my thanks to the members of the committee for their forbearance and their work over the year. So thank you very much indeed, everybody. And also to our colleagues, the officers who come and work so hard to give us presentations every time. Thank you very much indeed.